Rain slammed against glass the night Lena Calloway watched her father die. Two men in black coats stood in the doorway while he clutched his chest and begged for air that wouldn't come. They weren't doctors. They were collectors for Lucien Devereaux, a name whispered like a curse across the city's darkest corners. The choice they offered her was simple and brutal: marry their boss or bury her father by sunrise. She signed the contract with shaking hands and became the wife of a monster she'd never met. Now she lives in a mansion that feels like a tomb, surrounded by armed men and locked doors, married to a silver-haired crime lord who looks at her like she's merchandise he regrets purchasing. But the house hides darker secrets than her husband's cruelty, and someone inside these walls wants her dead. If you want to see how far survival can take someone, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Bam! The contract sat on the marble table between them like a death sentence written in elegant cursive. Lena stared at the document without touching it, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her fingernails carved crescents into her palms. The paper promised her father's debts forgiven, his medical bills paid, his life spared. In exchange for hers. Not her death. Something worse. Marriage. The man across from her didn't bother introducing himself. He didn't need to. Everyone in the city knew Marcus Hale's face. Cold eyes, razor-sharp suit, the kind of smile that promised violence wrapped in politeness. He worked for Lucien Devereaux, and that meant he owned pieces of the city most people pretended didn't exist. Your father has 72 hours, Marcus said, sliding a pen across the table. Sign now, and he walks out of the hospital tomorrow morning. Refuse, and we pull his oxygen tonight. Lena's throat tightened. This is insane. This is business. You're asking me to marry someone I've never met. Marcus leaned back in his chair, utterly unbothered by her panic. Mr. Devereaux requires a wife for certain social obligations. You meet the criteria. Your father owes a debt he can't repay. The arrangement benefits everyone. Everyone except me. You'll be alive, Marcus said flatly. That's more than most people in your father's position can say. The words hit her like a fist to the chest. She thought about her father lying in that hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped and hissed like they were counting down his final hours. 72 hours. 3 days. That's all the time she had to decide whether to save him or save herself. She picked up the pen. Her hand trembled so badly she could barely grip it, but she forced herself to write her name at the bottom of the page. The ink bled slightly where her palm smudged it. He left without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hallway of her small apartment like a countdown she couldn't stop. Lena sat alone in the dim kitchen, staring at her own shaking hands, and wondered what kind of monster required a wife like men required weapons. Bad. The car arrived exactly at 6. Lena stood outside her apartment building wearing the only white dress she owned, a simple cotton sundress she'd bought for a friend's garden party 2 summers ago. It felt wrong for a wedding, but everything about this felt wrong. The driver didn't speak. He opened the door, waited for her to climb inside, then shut her into the back seat like she was cargo being delivered. The city blurred past the tinted windows. Lena watched familiar streets disappear behind her, replaced by wider roads, taller buildings, neighborhoods where even the air seemed expensive. The car climbed higher into the hills overlooking the bay, until finally it turned through iron gates that opened automatically, as if the estate itself had been waiting for her. The Devereaux mansion sat at the end of a long driveway like a fortress disguised as a home. Stone walls, tall windows, armed guards stationed at every corner, cameras perched on the roofline like predatory birds watching everything below. Lena's stomach twisted. The driver opened her door. She stepped out onto gravel that crunched beneath her shoes, suddenly aware of how small she felt standing in front of this place. A woman in a dark suit waited by the entrance, older, sharp-eyed, her expression unreadable. "Miss Calloway, follow me." They walked through hallways lined with marble in silence. Lena's footsteps echoed too loudly. She tried not to stare at the paintings on the walls, dark oils depicting landscapes that looked haunted, portraits of men with hard faces and dead eyes. The woman led her into a small private chapel tucked into the east wing of the mansion. Lena stopped in the doorway. The room was cold, empty except for a priest standing near the altar and 2 witnesses she didn't recognize. No flowers, no music, no family. And standing near the front, waiting with his hands clasped behind his back, was Lucien Devereaux. He didn't turn when she entered. Lena's breath caught. She'd seen his photograph once in a newspaper article about political corruption, but the image hadn't prepared her for the reality. He was older than her by at least 15 years, silver hair combed back with brutal precision, shoulders broad beneath an immaculate black suit. Everything about him radiated control. The way he stood perfectly still, the measured rhythm of his breathing, the absence of any wasted movement. He looked like a man who had forgotten how to feel anything. The woman nudged Lena forward gently. Go. Lena's legs moved before her brain caught up. She walked down the short aisle alone, her cheap dress suddenly feeling like a costume in a play she didn't understand. Lucien finally turned to face her. His eyes were pale gray, cold as winter fog, and when they landed on her, they didn't soften. He studied her the way someone might study a contract before signing. Detached, analytical, already deciding whether she was worth the investment. Lena Calloway, he said. His voice was low, smooth, empty of warmth. Yes. You understand the terms of this arrangement. It wasn't a question. I understand my father lives if I marry you. That's all you need to understand. The priest cleared his throat. Shall we begin? Lucien nodded once. The ceremony lasted 4 minutes. Lena repeated vows she didn't believe while staring at a man who didn't look at her. The priest's words blurred together into meaningless noise. When it came time to exchange rings, Lucien slid a thin platinum band onto her finger without meeting her eyes. She did the same for him, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the ring. You may kiss the bride, the priest said quietly. Lucien stepped closer. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. He leaned down, his breath brushing against her cheek, and pressed the briefest, coldest kiss against the corner of her mouth. It lasted less than a second. Then he pulled back, already turning away as if she'd ceased to exist. It's done, Lucien said to the witnesses. One of them handed him a folder. He opened it, scanned the contents, then signed something with sharp, efficient strokes. When he closed the folder, he finally looked at Lena again. Your father's debts are cleared. He'll be released from the hospital tomorrow morning. Relief flooded through her so suddenly she almost collapsed. Thank you, she whispered. Lucien's expression didn't change. Don't thank me. You paid for it. The words hit her like ice water. He walked past her without another glance, his footsteps echoing out of the chapel and down the hallway beyond. The witnesses followed him silently, leaving Lena standing alone with the priest. The older man offered her a sad, knowing smile. Congratulations, Mrs. Devereaux. The name felt like a brand burned into her skin. Des. The woman in the dark suit reappeared. I'll show you to your quarters. Lena followed her through the mansion in a daze, trying to process what had just happened. She was married. To a stranger. To a man who looked at her like she was an obligation he resented. They climbed a wide staircase to the second floor, then walked down another long hallway lined with closed doors. The woman finally stopped at the last door on the left and pushed it open. This is your room. Lena stepped inside. The space was enormous. A 4-poster bed dominated the center, draped in white linens that looked untouched. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate grounds, currently dark except for scattered security lights. A door on the left led to a private bathroom. Another door on the right stood closed. That connects to Mr. Devereaux's quarters, the woman said, following Lena's gaze. It remains locked, unless he chooses otherwise. Lena's stomach dropped. We're not sharing a bed? No. The woman's tone was matter-of-fact. This is a contractual arrangement, Miss Calloway. Mr. Devereaux has no interest in intimacy. The bluntness of it should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like another reminder that she wasn't a person to him, just a signature on paper. My name is Vera, the woman continued. I manage the household staff. If you need anything, you ask me. Meals are served at 8, 1, and 7. You're expected to dress appropriately for dinner. Mr. Devereaux values punctuality and silence. Silence? Vera's expression hardened slightly. He doesn't tolerate unnecessary conversation during meals. Eat. Don't speak unless spoken to. Lena swallowed hard. What else? The West Wing is off limits, so is the basement, the security office, Mr. Devereaux's private study. The staff quarters. Vera ticked off each restriction like she was reading from a manual. You're free to move through the main floors, the library, the gardens, but if a door is locked, it stays locked. Understood? What happens if I try to open one? You won't. The certainty in Vera's voice made Lena's skin crawl. One more thing, Vera added. Visitors are not permitted without Mr. Devereaux's approval. That includes your family. Lena's chest tightened. I can't see my father? Not here. If you wish to visit him elsewhere, you submit a request through me. Mr. Devereaux will approve or deny it. He's my father, and this is Mr. Devereaux's home. Vera's tone didn't soften. You'll learn quickly that everything here operates on his terms. The faster you accept that, the easier your life becomes. She left without waiting for a response. Lena stood alone in the enormous bedroom, her wedding ring heavy on her finger, and realized she'd traded one cage for another. The first week passed in suffocating routine. Lena woke alone, ate breakfast alone in a dining room large enough to seat 30 people, wandered the mansion's public spaces like a ghost haunting someone else's life. Lucien was everywhere and nowhere. She saw him occasionally in passing, crossing the hallway with his security chief, a hard-faced man named Roman Vale. Leaving early in the morning in dark suits that looked like armor, returning late at night with blood occasionally staining his cuffs, though he always changed before anyone else could notice. He never spoke to her. The few times their paths crossed, he acknowledged her with the barest nod, his cold gray eyes sliding over her like she was furniture he'd forgotten he owned. The staff treated her with distant politeness. They brought her meals, cleaned her room, answered her questions with rehearsed precision, but none of them looked her in the eye. None of them lingered for conversation. It was like living in a museum where she was the least interesting exhibit. On the 8th day, Lena broke. She was eating dinner alone again, roasted chicken and vegetables she barely tasted, when the door to the dining room opened and Lucien walked in. He stopped when he saw her, clearly not expecting anyone to be there. For a moment, they stared at each other across the long table. I didn't realize you ate here, Lucien said finally. Vera said meals are served at 7. I usually eat in my office. Lena set down her fork. Then I'll leave. Stay. The command froze her in place. Lucien moved to the opposite end of the table and sat down. A staff member appeared instantly, setting a plate in front of him. He ate with the same controlled precision he applied to everything else. Measured bites, no wasted motion, eyes focused on nothing in particular. Lena watched him, her frustration building with every silent second. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Lucien didn't look up. No. Why did you need a wife? His jaw tightened. I said no. You bought me like I'm a piece of property, Lena continued, her voice shaking. The least you can do is tell me why. Lucien set down his knife and fork with deliberate care. When he finally looked at her, his expression was pure ice. You are property, he said quietly. You signed a contract. Your father's debts were transferred to me, and in exchange you became my responsibility. That's all this is. Don't romanticize it. I'm not romanticizing anything. Lena's hands clenched into fists. I just want to understand what I'm supposed to be doing here. Existing, Lucien said flatly. That's all I require from you. Then why keep me in this house? Why not just because appearances matter? His tone sharpened. I have business associates who expect certain things. A wife provides legitimacy, stability. It makes me look less like what I am. And what are you? Lucien stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Someone you should stop asking questions. He left the dining room without finishing his meal. Lena sat alone in the silence, her appetite completely gone, and realized she was living with a man who had mastered the art of being unreachable. 2 days later, everything changed. Lena was in the library, trying to lose herself in a book she couldn't focus on, when Vera appeared in the doorway. Mr. Devereaux requires your presence. Lena's stomach dropped. Why? There's a dinner tonight. Business associates. You're expected to attend. It's not optional. Vera's expression softened slightly. A dress has been sent to your room. Be ready by 7. Lena returned to her quarters and found a garment bag hanging on the back of her door. She unzipped it slowly, revealing a floor-length black gown that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. She showered, dried her hair, applied minimal makeup because she didn't know what else to do. The dress fit perfectly, which shouldn't have surprised her, because, of course, Lucien's people had known her exact measurements. At exactly 7, Vera knocked on her door. "You look appropriate," Vera said, which Lena assumed was a compliment. They descended the main staircase together. Lena's heels clicked against marble. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The dining room had been transformed. The long table was set for 12, candles flickering between crystal glasses and polished silverware. Men in expensive suits stood near the bar, talking in low voices punctuated by cold laughter. Lucien stood among them, commanding the room without effort. When he saw Lena, something flickered across his face, so fast she almost missed it. Then the mask slammed back into place. He crossed the room and stopped in front of her. "Stay beside me," he said quietly. "Don't speak unless someone addresses you directly. If anyone asks personal questions, defer to me." "Why would they ask?" "Because you're new, and they'll want to know if you're a weakness." The words sent ice down her spine. Lucien offered his arm. Lena took it, her fingers resting lightly against his sleeve, and let him guide her into the center of the room. The conversations died instantly. "Gentlemen," Lucien said smoothly, "this is my wife, Lena." The men stared at her like wolves evaluating prey. One of them, older, balding, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, stepped forward. "Lucien, you didn't mention you'd gotten married. It was a private ceremony. How romantic." The man's gaze slid over Lena slowly. "She's quite young." "She's quite my wife," Lucien said, his tone dropping several degrees. "I trust that's clear." The man raised his hands in mock surrender. Of course, no offense intended. But his eyes stayed on Lena a second too long. The dinner was torture. Lena sat beside Lucien, barely touching the food on her plate, while the men around the table discussed things in coded language she didn't understand. Shipments, territories, names spoken like curses. She felt their eyes on her constantly, assessing, calculating, wondering what role she played in Lucien Devereaux's empire. Halfway through the meal, the balding man leaned forward. "Tell me, Lena," he said, his voice dripping false warmth. "How did you meet our dear Lucien?" The table went silent. Lena's mind raced. She looked at Lucien, who watched her with those cold gray eyes, waiting to see if she'd break. "Through mutual circumstances," Lena said carefully. The man laughed. "How mysterious. Was it love at first sight?" "It was practical," Lucien cut in, "which is more reliable than love." The men around the table chuckled and the conversation moved on. But Lena felt the tension radiating from Lucien's body, coiled and dangerous beneath his perfectly tailored suit. When dinner finally ended, the men filtered into the study for brandy and cigars. Lucien stood, buttoning his jacket, and leaned down to murmur in Lena's ear. "Go to your room. Lock the door. Don't come out until morning." "Why, now, Lena." The command in his voice left no room for argument. She left the dining room on shaking legs, climbed the stairs, and locked herself inside her quarters just as Lucien had ordered. Hours later, she woke to the sound of shouting. Lena sat up in bed, her heart racing. The voices came from somewhere below, angry, overlapping, chaotic. Then a gunshot cracked through the air. She froze. Footsteps pounded down the hallway outside her door. More shouting. Another gunshot, closer this time. Lena scrambled out of bed and pressed herself against the wall, her entire body shaking. She thought about what Lucien had said. "Lock the door. Don't come out." The doorknob rattled. Lena's breath stopped. Someone on the other side cursed, then moved on. The footsteps faded down the hall. Silence fell like a weight. Lena stood there in the darkness, clutching her arms around herself, and realized she'd just survived her first night inside Lucien Devereaux's war. Mick. Morning came slowly. Lena didn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed watching the door, waiting for someone to break through, until pale light finally crept across the floor. When Vera knocked at 8, Lena nearly screamed. "Breakfast is ready," Vera said through the door. Lena unlocked it with trembling hands. "What happened last night?" Vera's expression gave nothing away. A minor disagreement between business associates. It's been handled. I heard gunshots. Then you heard Mr. Devereaux protecting his home. Vera turned and walked away, leaving Lena standing in the doorway with more questions than answers. She found Lucien in the dining room, eating breakfast as if nothing had happened. He wore a fresh suit, his hair perfectly styled, not a trace of last night's violence visible anywhere on him. Lena sat down across from him without waiting for permission. Who were those men? She asked. Lucien didn't look up. Business partners. One of them tried to open my door. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Then he set it down carefully and met her eyes. What? Last night, during the... Lena hesitated. During whatever happened, someone tried my door. Lucien's expression darkened in a way that made her stomach twist. You locked it. Yes. Good. He stood abruptly and pulled his phone from his pocket, dialing as he walked toward the door. Roman, he said sharply, I need surveillance from the second floor, last night, Lena's quarters. He left the room without another word. Lena sat alone, staring at her untouched breakfast, and realized something fundamental had shifted. Lucien didn't care about her, but he cared about control, and someone inside his own house had just threatened that control by coming near her. By afternoon, Roman Vale appeared in the library where Lena had been hiding since breakfast. He was built like a weapon, broad shoulders, scarred knuckles, eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. He'd barely spoken 2 words to her since she'd arrived. Mrs. Devereaux, he said. Mr. Devereaux wants to see you. His office. Lena stood on shaking legs. Why? He'll explain. Roman led her through hallways she'd never seen before, deeper into the mansion's private wings. They stopped at a heavy oak door. Roman knocked once, then pushed it open. Lucien's office was exactly what she expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with volumes that looked untouched. He sat behind a massive desk, his laptop open in front of him. When they entered, he closed it. Sit, Lucien said. Lena sat. Roman remained standing by the door like a sentinel. Lucien leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unreadable expression. The man who tried your door last night was Victor Reyes, one of my father's oldest associates. Lena's throat tightened. What did he want? To test boundaries, Lucien said flatly. He wanted to see if you were protected, if you mattered. And? He learned that you do. The words hung in the air like a threat. What happened to him? Lena asked. Lucien's expression didn't change. He's no longer a concern. The implication settled over her like ice. I didn't ask for any of this, Lena whispered. No, Lucien agreed. You didn't, but you're here now. And that means you're part of something you don't understand. People will use you to get to me. They'll threaten you to test me. They'll hurt you if they think it gives them leverage. Then why keep me here? Because the alternative is worse. Lena stared at him. What alternative? Lucien stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Your father's debts weren't just financial, Lena. He borrowed from people who don't forgive. If I hadn't intervened, they would have taken payment in other ways, ways that would have destroyed you both. So you're my protector now? I'm your owner. Lucien turned to face her. The contract makes that clear. You belong to me, and what belongs to me, I protect, not out of kindness, out of necessity. The coldness in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it sparked something sharp and angry in her chest. I'm not a possession, Lena said. Yes, Lucien said quietly. You are. He walked past her toward the door, then paused. Roman will assign you a personal security detail starting today. You don't leave the estate without them. You don't go anywhere alone. If someone approaches you that you don't recognize, you walk away immediately. I'm a prisoner. You're protected. Lucy said. His tone hardened. There's a difference. He left the office, Roman following behind him, and Lena sat alone in the silence, wondering how long she could survive in a cage she hadn't built but couldn't escape. The security detail arrived the next morning. Her name was Celine, mid-30s, athletic build, dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She moved like a soldier and spoke in clipped sentences that left no room for argument. I'll be with you at all times, Celine explained as they walked through the estate gardens. Inside the house, I stay close, but not intrusive. If you leave the grounds, I'm in the car with you. Does Lucien trust you? Lena asked. Celine's expression didn't shift. Mr. Devereaux doesn't trust anyone, but he pays me to keep you alive, and I'm very good at my job. Over the following days, Lena learned that Celine wasn't exaggerating. She noticed everything. The gardener who lingered too long near the east wing windows, the delivery driver who asked too many questions, the way certain staff members watched Lena when they thought no one else was looking. You have enemies you've never met, Celine said one afternoon as they walked the perimeter. People who want to hurt Mr. Devereaux will see you as the easiest target. Why? Because you're new, unprotected, human. The last word landed like a punch. Lucien isn't human? Celine stopped walking and turned to face her. Mr. Devereaux is a lot of things, Mrs. Devereaux, but human isn't the word most people use. That night, Lena lay in bed staring at the ceiling and realized she'd married a man the entire city feared like a nightmare-given form, Saak. 3 weeks into her new life, Lena finally saw her father. Lucien approved the visit without explanation. A car drove her to a small apartment across town where her father had been moved after his release from the hospital. He looked healthier, color in his cheeks, steady hands, but his eyes filled with guilt the moment he saw her. Lena! She hugged him before he could finish, holding him tight enough to convince herself he was real. I'm okay, she whispered. I'm okay. What did you have to do? He asked, his voice breaking. What did they make you do? Nothing. Lena pulled back, forcing a smile. I just married someone, that's all. Her father stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Who? It doesn't matter. Lena. Dad, please. She took his hands. You're alive. You're safe. That's all that matters. But the guilt in his eyes didn't fade. They spent 2 hours together, talking about nothing important, avoiding the truth like it was a bomb that might explode if they looked at it too closely. When the car came to take her back, her father walked her to the door. If you need me, he said quietly, if you need anything, I know. She left before he could see her cry. Celine sat beside her in the back seat on the drive home, silent and watchful. Your father seems like a good man, Celine said finally. He is. Then he'll spend the rest of his life knowing what you sacrificed for him. Lena turned to look at her. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, Celine said. It's supposed to remind you that guilt is heavier than chains. On. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She wandered the mansion's hallways in the darkness, restless and suffocating. The house felt different at night. Shadows deeper, silence thicker, like the walls themselves were holding secrets. She found herself standing outside Lucien's office. The door was closed. Light spilled beneath it. Lena raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. What would she even say? Before she could decide, the door opened. Lucien stood in the doorway, still dressed in his suit despite the late hour. He looked exhausted. Shadows beneath his eyes, tension in his shoulders. You should be asleep, he said. I can't sleep. Try harder. Lena didn't move. Can I ask you something? Lucien sighed, stepping aside. Come in. She entered his office slowly, taking in the organized chaos. Papers spread across his desk, maps pinned to the wall. A bottle of whiskey sitting half empty beside his laptop. What do you want to know? Lucien asked, closing the door behind her. Why me? Lena turned to face him. There are probably hundreds of women who would have married you. Why choose me? Lucien walked to his desk and poured himself a drink. You were available. Your father owed money. The timing worked. That's it? That's all it needs to be. What if I can't do this? The words came out before she could stop them. What if I can't just exist here like a piece of furniture? Lucien drank slowly, his gray eyes locked on hers. Then you'll learn, or you'll break. Either way, the contract stands. You're not even pretending to care. Would you prefer I lie to you? Lena's frustration boiled over. I'd prefer you treat me like a person instead of an obligation. Lucien set down his glass with deliberate care. You want honesty? Fine. You're here because I needed a solution to a problem. Marriage provides legitimacy in certain circles. It makes people underestimate me. It creates the illusion of humanity. He stepped closer. But don't mistake that for kindness, Lena. I'm not kind. I'm not gentle. And I'm certainly not someone you should ever trust. Then why protect me? Lena challenged. Why assign guards and track everyone who comes near me? Because you're mine. His voice dropped dangerously low. And I protect what's mine. Not because I care about you, because losing you would be inconvenient. The words should have hurt. Instead, they ignited something fierce and reckless inside her. You're a coward, Lena said quietly. Lucien's expression darkened. Excuse me? You hide behind walls and rules and violence because you're terrified of being human. She took a step toward him. You married me to look normal, but you can't even pretend for 5 minutes that you're capable of feeling anything. Be very careful, Lucien warned. Or what? You'll lock me in my room? Assign more guards? Remind me I'm property? Lena laughed bitterly. You've already done all of that. For a moment, Lucien just stared at her, his jaw tight, fury and something else flickering behind his eyes. Then he turned away. Get out. Gladly. Lena left his office, her heart pounding, and didn't look back. But as she walked down the hallway toward her room, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just crossed a line she didn't know existed. And somewhere behind her, Lucien stood in his office staring at the closed door, wondering why the hell her words had landed like bullets beneath his armor. The morning after their confrontation, Lucien didn't speak to her. He passed her in the hallway outside his office like she was a ghost he'd decided to stop acknowledging. His footsteps didn't slow. His eyes didn't shift in her direction. He just walked past in his perfectly tailored suit, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and deadly, as he spoke to someone about shipments and territories and problems that needed solving. Lena stood frozen against the wall, watching him disappear around the corner, and felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd called him a coward, and apparently, cowards didn't forgive. The silence stretched through the next day, then the next. Lucien took his meals in his office, left the estate before sunrise, returned after midnight. When their paths crossed, he looked through her like she was furniture that had outlived its usefulness. Celine noticed. You pissed him off, she said one afternoon while they walked the garden perimeter. I told him the truth. Same thing. Celine's tone was dry. Mr. Devereaux doesn't appreciate honesty when it makes him uncomfortable. Then maybe he shouldn't have married someone with a spine. Celine almost smiled. Almost. Be careful, Mrs. Devereaux. Men like him don't stay quiet because they've forgiven you. They stay quiet because they're deciding what to do with you. The words lodged beneath Lena's ribs like a warning she couldn't shake. That night, she found out what Lucien had decided. Vera appeared at her door just after 7, her expression unreadable as always. Mr. Devereaux requires your presence at dinner tonight. There will be guests. Lena's stomach dropped. What kind of guests? The kind you don't refuse. An hour later, Lena stood in front of her mirror wearing another dress that had appeared in her closet. Deep emerald green this time, fitted and elegant and designed to make her look like she belonged in Lucien's world. She hated how well it worked. Downstairs, the dining room had been transformed again. More place settings, more candles. More men in expensive suits gathered near the bar, their laughter cold and sharp. But this time, there were women too. 3 of them, draped in designer gowns and jewelry that caught the light like warnings. They stood together near the fireplace, their eyes calculating as they watched Lena descend the stairs. Lucien waited at the bottom. He wore black tonight, suit, shirt, tie, everything the color of shadows. When he saw her, something flickered across his face too quickly to read. You look acceptable, he said. You look like a funeral. His jaw tightened. Stay close. Don't wander. And for God's sake, don't antagonize anyone. I'll try to contain myself. Lucien's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, one of the men called his name from across the room. He offered Lena his arm without warmth. She took it without gratitude. They entered the dining room together, and every conversation died. Lucien, one of the women purred, stepping forward. She was older than Lena, maybe 40, with sharp cheekbones and a smile that promised cruelty. You didn't mention your little bride would be joining us tonight. Didn't I? Lucien's tone was ice. Lena, this is Victoria Lang. She runs operations along the waterfront. Victoria's gaze slid over Lena like she was merchandise at an auction. How charming. She's even younger up close. She's also standing right here, Lena said. The room went silent. Victoria's smile sharpened. Oh, she has a voice. How delightful. Lucien's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on Lena's arm. A warning. Shall we sit? He said smoothly, steering Lena toward the table before she could respond. Dinner was worse than the last time. The men discussed business in coded language while the women watched Lena like predators circling wounded prey. Every question they asked felt like a trap. Every compliment hid an insult. So tell me, Lena, Victoria said halfway through the second course, swirling wine in her glass. How does it feel being married to the most dangerous man in the city? Lena met her gaze. I wouldn't know. I'm married to Lucien. Someone choked on their drink. Victoria's smile went sharp as a blade. Careful, darling. Sarcasm doesn't suit you. Neither does pretending I belong here, Lena said, but we all do what we have to. Lucien's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes glittering with something predatory. You think you're clever, but clever girls don't last long in this world. They get broken, or they disappear. Victoria, Lucien said quietly. The single word dropped like a stone. Victoria sat back, her smile never fading. Of course. My apologies. She turned to Lucien. She's spirited. I can see why you chose her. I didn't choose her for her spirit. The words hit Lena like a slap. The rest of dinner blurred into noise she stopped hearing. She pushed food around her plate and counted the minutes until it ended. When the men finally retreated to the study for their private conversations, the women moved to the parlor. Lena tried to escape upstairs, but Victoria caught her arm. Not so fast, darling. We're dying to get to know you better. Lena found herself trapped in a room with 3 women who looked at her like she was an intruder in their territory. So, one of them said, younger, blonde, dripping diamonds. How did you really meet Lucien? Through family circumstances. How vague. Victoria settled into an armchair like a queen holding court. Let me guess. Your father owed money. Lucien bought you to settle the debt. Am I close? Lena's silence was answer enough. Victoria laughed, the sound brittle and cruel. Oh, sweetheart, you're not his wife. You're a transaction. Do you know how many women have tried to get close to Lucien Devereaux? Women with power, money, connections. And he chose you, a nobody with nothing to offer except desperation. Then I guess I should feel special. You should feel temporary. Victoria leaned forward. Men like Lucien don't keep things that don't serve a purpose. The moment you stop being useful, you'll disappear like all the others. Others? The blonde woman giggled. Oh, she doesn't know. Doesn't know what? Lena asked, her heart starting to pound. Victoria's smile was pure poison. That you're not the first girl Lucien's bought. You're just the first one stupid enough to think it means something. The words hit like ice water. Before Lena could respond, the door opened and Lucien appeared, his expression unreadable. We're leaving, he said. Lena stood on shaking legs, grateful for the escape, even as Victoria's laughter followed her out of the room. The car ride home was silent. Lena sat pressed against the window, staring at the city lights blurring past, while Lucien sat rigid on the opposite side of the back seat. Roman drove, Celine sat in the passenger seat. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Lucien broke the silence. What did Victoria say to you? Does it matter? It matters if it upset you. Lena turned to look at him. Why? Afraid I'll embarrass you again? Afraid you'll do something reckless. Like what? Escape? Run away? Lena laughed bitterly. Where would I even go? Lucien's jaw tightened. What did she say? She said I'm temporary, Lena said flatly, that I'm not the first woman you've bought, that the moment I stop being useful, I'll disappear. Something dangerous flickered behind Lucien's eyes. Victoria talks too much. Is it true? Which part? Any of it. Lucien stared at her for a long moment. You're not the first arrangement I've made, but you're the first one I've married. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to be the truth. The car pulled through the estate gates. The moment they stopped, Lena climbed out without waiting for the driver and headed straight for the house. Lucien caught up to her in the foyer. We're not done talking. Yes, Lena said, spinning to face him. We are. Because I don't want to hear any more truths tonight. I don't want to know about the other women or the other deals or whatever else you've done that you consider normal. I just want to go to my room and pretend for 5 minutes that my life isn't completely fucked. Your life isn't fucked, Lucian said coldly. Your life is protected. My life is a cage. Better a cage than a grave. The words hung between them like a weapon neither wanted to pick up. Go to bed, Lena, Lucian said finally, his voice empty of everything except exhaustion. We'll talk tomorrow. No, Lena said. We won't, because you don't talk. You give orders and expect obedience and treat everyone around you like pawns on a chessboard you've already won. Then maybe you should stop playing. I never wanted to play. Lucienne stepped closer, his eyes burning with something she couldn't name. Then why are you still here? Because you won't let me leave. I would, Lucian said quietly. If you asked. The confession landed like a bomb. Lena stared at him, her heart racing. What? The contract binds you legally, not physically. Lucian's voice was carefully controlled. If you want to walk away, I won't stop you. And my father? His debts stay cleared. The deal was already made. Lena's breath caught. You're lying. I don't lie about business. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me that before? Lucien's expression hardened back into stone. Because I needed to see if you'd stay. Why? Because people who stay by choice are more valuable than people who stay because they have to. The calculation behind his words made her sick. You're testing me, Lena whispered. I'm learning you. Fuck you. She turned and ran up the stairs, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall until she was alone. Behind her, Lucienne stood in the foyer watching her disappear, and wondered when the hell this arrangement had started feeling like something he couldn't afford to lose. Lena didn't sleep. She paced her room like a caged animal, Lucien's words echoing in her head. If you want to walk away, I won't stop you. She could leave. Right now. Pack a bag and walk out the front door and never look back. Her father was safe. The contract was fulfilled. She owed Lucian nothing. So why couldn't she move? Dawn broke slowly, painting the sky outside her window in shades of gray that matched her exhaustion. Lena finally collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, and admitted the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. She didn't want to leave. Not because she was afraid, because somewhere between the cold ceremonies and hostile dinners and late-night confrontations, she'd started seeing cracks in Lucien's armor. Brief moments when the mask slipped and something raw and human flickered behind his eyes before he slammed it shut again. And she wanted to know what he was hiding beneath all that control. The realization terrified her. A knock at her door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Celine entered, her expression more tense than usual. "Mr. Devereaux wants to see you. The garden. Now." Lena sat up. "Why?" He didn't say, but he looked... Celine hesitated. Angry. But... Lucian stood near the stone fountain at the center of the garden, his back to her, hands clasped behind him like he was preparing for battle. Lena approached slowly, her stomach churning. "You wanted to see me?" Lucian turned. His face was carved from ice, but his eyes burned. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" He pulled something from his pocket, a photograph, and handed it to her. Lena's blood went cold. It was a picture of her, taken inside the mansion, in her bedroom, through the window. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "It was delivered to the front gate this morning. No note, no demands, just this." Lena's hands started shaking. "Someone was watching me." "Someone got close enough to take this without triggering any alarms," Lucian said, his voice deadly calm. "Which means they either bypassed my security or someone inside let them through." "You think someone in the house?" "I don't think. I know." Lucien took the photograph back, his jaw tight. "There's a traitor in this estate, and they're using you to send me a message." "What message?" Lucien's eyes met hers, and for the first time she saw genuine fear beneath the fury. "That you're vulnerable, and if they can get a photograph, they can get to you." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. "What do we do?" "You move into my quarters, tonight." Lena's heart stopped. What? The connecting door between our rooms. It opens. You sleep on my side of the estate where I can control every access point. I'm not... This isn't negotiable, Lena. Lucian stepped closer, his voice dropping. Someone inside this house betrayed me. Until I find out who, you stay where I can see you. You mean where you can control me? I mean where I can keep you alive. The raw honesty in his voice silenced her argument. Fine, Lena said finally, but I'm not sharing a bed with you. I'm not asking you to. Mbase. By nightfall, Lena's belongings had been moved into Lucian's private quarters. The suite was massive. Bedroom, sitting room, office space, private bathroom bigger than her entire apartment back home. Everything decorated in dark woods and cold grays, clinical and impersonal except for one detail. A second bed had been set up in the sitting room. Lena stared at it, then looked at Lucian standing in the doorway. You had them bring another bed. I told you, I'm not asking you to share mine. Something in her chest twisted at the gesture. Thank you, she said quietly. Lucian nodded once, then turned toward his office. Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'm interrogating the entire security team. What if you don't find the traitor? He paused in the doorway, his back still to her. Then I'll burn this entire house down and start over. The door closed behind him. Lena stood alone in the sitting room, staring at the bed that Lucian had ordered for her, and realized she'd just crossed into territory she didn't know how to navigate. She was living inside his private world now, and that changed everything. The interrogation started at dawn. Lena woke to raised voices echoing through the suite. She pulled on a robe and followed the sound to Lucian's office, where Roman stood beside him reviewing security footage on multiple screens. 12 minutes between patrols, Roman was saying. Someone timed it perfectly. Who had access to the schedules? Lucian asked, his voice cold enough to freeze blood. Everyone on the security team. Then question everyone. Lena knocked softly on the open door. Both men turned. Did I wake you? Lucian asked. The yelling did. Roman almost smiled. My apologies, Mrs. Devereaux. Don't apologize, Lucian said sharply. Just find who's responsible. Roman left, closing the door behind him. Lena stepped into the office. Can I help? No. I'm the one in the photograph. Maybe I saw something you didn't. Lucian's tone was final. If you'd seen anything suspicious, you would have reported it. How do you know? Because you're terrified, Lucian said bluntly. Fear makes people observant. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. What happens when you find them? Lucian's expression didn't change. They stopped being a problem. The casual way he said it made her stomach turn. You're going to kill them. I'm going to protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Lucian stood, moving around the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. Yes, he said quietly. You are. The contract says so. The ring on your finger says so. Every person in this city who's heard your name knows you belong to me. That's not... And right now, Lucian continued, his voice dropping, someone is threatening you specifically because you're mine, because they know hurting you is the fastest way to hurt me. Lena's breath caught. Why would hurting me hurt you? Lucian stared at her, something dangerous flickering behind his eyes. Because you're my responsibility. But the way he said it felt like a lie. The first interrogation happened that afternoon. Lena watched from Lucian's office as Roman brought guards in one by one. Each interview was methodical, brutal, efficient. Lucian asked questions in a voice like winter, and the guards answered with fear in their eyes. None of them broke. By the fifth interview, Lucian's frustration was palpable. He paced the office like a caged predator, his control fraying at the edges. They're trained not to crack, Roman said. Whoever did this knows how we operate. Then change how we operate, Lucian snapped. Sir, I want every access point monitored, every camera reviewed, every staff member accounted for every minute of every day. That's going to take, I don't care how long it takes. Lucian's voice went deadly quiet. Find them. Roman left without another word. Lena stood by the window, watching the guards move through the courtyard below, and felt the weight of being the center of someone's target. This is because of me, she said. This is because someone wants to destroy me, Lucian corrected. You're just the weapon they chose. Same thing. No. Lucian crossed the room to stand beside her. If they wanted you dead, you'd be dead. They want me afraid. They want me distracted. They want me making mistakes. Are you afraid? Lucian's jaw tightened. I'm furious. That's not an answer. He turned to look at her, and for just a moment the mask slipped. Yes, he admitted. I'm afraid, because for the first time in 10 years I have something I can't afford to lose. The confession hung between them like exposed wire. You mean the estate, Lena whispered. I mean you. The words detonated in the silence. Lena stared at him, her heart hammering. You don't mean that. I don't say things I don't mean. But you told me I was just a contract, an obligation, property. I lied, Lucian said quietly. The world tilted. Before Lena could respond, the office door burst open. Roman stood in the doorway, his expression grim. We found something. Pasht. The surveillance footage played on the screen in grainy black and white. Lena watched herself move through her old bedroom 3 nights ago. Watched herself get ready for bed. Watched herself turn off the lights and climb beneath the covers. And then, in the bottom corner of the frame, a shadow moved. Someone inside the room. Lena's blood went cold. Freeze it there, Lucian ordered. Roman paused the footage. The shadow was barely visible, just a shape near the door that shouldn't have been there. Who's that? Lena whispered. We're running facial recognition now, Roman said. But there's more. He pulled up another clip. This one showed the hallway outside Lena's room. A figure moved past the camera with deliberate casualness, their face turned away from the lens. But Lena recognized the walk, the build, the way they moved. That's Celine, she breathed. The room went silent. Lucien's expression darkened into something terrifying. Bring her to me, he said, his voice empty of everything except rage. Now! Roman left immediately. Lena stood frozen, her mind racing. Celine, her guard, her protector, the person assigned to keep her safe. She was in my room, Lena said, her voice shaking. She was watching me sleep. She was reporting on you, Lucian corrected, his tone ice cold. Someone's paying her to monitor your movements. Who? We're about to find out, Mus. They brought Celine to Lucian's office in handcuffs. She didn't resist, didn't fight, just walked between 2 guards with her head held high, her expression unreadable. Roman shoved her into a chair. Lucien stood in front of her, arms crossed, radiating fury. How long? He asked. Celine met his gaze without flinching. 6 months. Before Lena? Long before. Lena's stomach dropped. Who hired you? Lucian asked. Does it matter? It matters if you want to leave this room breathing. Celine smiled. Cold, brittle, broken. You're not going to kill me, Lucien. You need me alive to find out who's pulling the strings. I can make you talk without killing you, Lucian said quietly. I know, but you won't. Because you're not your father. The words hit like a slap. Lucien's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something dark and dangerous. Tell me who you're working for, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, and I'll make your death quick. Celine's smile widened. I'm working for someone who wants what you have, someone who's been watching you for years, someone who knows your weaknesses better than you know them yourself. Name. Damien sends his regards. The room froze. Lena watched Lucien's face drain of color, watched his hands curl into fists, watched decades of control shatter in the space of a single heartbeat. My brother is dead, Lucian said. Your brother is very much alive, Celine said, and he's been waiting a long time for the right moment to destroy you. You're lying. Am I? Celine leaned forward despite the handcuffs. He told me you'd say that. Told me you'd refuse to believe he survived the fire. But he did. And now he's coming for everything you built, starting with her. Celine's eyes shifted to Lena. Lucian moved faster than Lena thought possible, slamming his hands on the arms of Celine's chair and leaning in until their faces were inches apart. If you or my brother touch her—" "You'll what?" Celine interrupted. "Kill us? We're already dead, Lucien. The moment we chose to betray you, we signed our own death warrants. But at least we'll die knowing we broke you first." Lucien straightened slowly, his breathing controlled but his eyes burning. "Roman," he said, "take her to the holding cell. No one speaks to her except me." Roman hauled Celine to her feet. As they dragged her toward the door, she looked back at Lena. "He's going to get you killed," Celine said. "The moment Damien realizes Lucien cares about you, you become the most valuable target in this city. Run while you still can." The door slammed shut behind her. Lena stood trembling in the silence, trying to process what had just happened. "Your brother?" she said finally. "You told me he was dead." "I thought he was." "What happened?" Lucien walked to the window, his back rigid. 10 years ago, my father's empire was falling apart. Internal wars, betrayals, blood in every corner. My brother and I were supposed to rebuild it together. He paused. But Damien wanted power faster than he wanted to earn it. He tried to kill me, burn down the estate with me inside. I survived. He didn't, or so I thought. And now he's back. And now he's back, Lucien repeated, his voice hollow. And he knows exactly how to hurt me. Lena's throat tightened. Through me. Lucien turned to face her, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked genuinely afraid. Yes, he admitted. Through you. The truth settled over her like a death sentence. What do we do? Lucien crossed the room in 3 strides and gripped her shoulders, his gray eyes burning into hers. You stay alive, he said. No matter what happens, no matter who comes for you, you survive. And you? I end this. How? Lucien's expression hardened back into the monster she'd married. By finding my brother and making sure he stays dead this time. He released her and turned toward the door, already moving into survival mode, already planning the war that was coming. But Lena stood frozen in the center of his office, staring at the empty space where he'd been standing, and realized she'd just crossed the point of no return. She wasn't just Lucien's wife anymore. She was his weakness. And in his world, weaknesses didn't survive. The estate transformed into a war zone overnight. Lena woke to the sound of boots pounding through hallways, radios crackling with urgent voices, doors slamming as Lucien's security team swept every inch of the mansion searching for more traitors. She lay in the makeshift bed Lucien had ordered for her, staring at the ceiling of his sitting room, and listened to him moving through his office just beyond the door. Phone calls made in clipped sentences, orders given without room for negotiation, the sound of a man preparing for battle. She hadn't seen him since last night when he'd gripped her shoulders and told her to survive. The memory of his hands on her, the fear in his eyes, made her chest tight. Dawn broke gray and cold. Lena finally gave up on sleep and pulled on clothes from the luggage that had been moved into Lucien's quarters. Everything felt surreal. Wearing her own dress while standing in a room that smelled like him, expensive cologne and something darker she couldn't name. She found him still in his office, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. You didn't sleep, she said from the doorway. Lucien didn't look up from the documents spread across his desk. Neither did you. How do you know? I heard you moving around. The admission that he'd been listening for her made something in her stomach twist. Have you found anything? Lena asked. Damien's been dead for 10 years, or he was supposed to be. Lucien dragged a hand through his hair, the first uncontrolled gesture she'd ever seen from him. Every record says he died in the fire, body identified, death certificate signed, funeral held. Then how? Because my father wanted him dead, Lucien said flatly. And when my father wanted something, he made it happen, real or not. Lena stepped into the office. You think your father faked Damien's death? I think my father was capable of anything. Lucien finally looked at her, and the raw hatred in his eyes made her freeze. Including convincing me my brother was Ash when he was actually alive somewhere plotting revenge. Where's your father now? Dead. Actually dead this time. Heart attack 5 years ago. Lucien's mouth twisted into something bitter. Convenient timing. You think Damien... I don't know what I think anymore. Lucien stood abruptly, pacing to the window. All I know is my brother is alive. He's been watching me for years, and he's chosen now to make his move. Why now? Lucien turned to face her, and the answer was written all over his face. Because of you. The words hung unspoken between them like an accusation. I should leave, Lena said quietly. If I'm the reason he's targeting you, you're not leaving. Lucien, you leave, and he wins. Lucien crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping directly in front of her. That's what he wants. To isolate me. Make me choose between protecting you and protecting everything I've built. Then choose the Empire, Lena said. You're my wife. The words came out harsh, desperate. And I don't abandon what's mine. Even if it gets you killed? Lucien's eyes burned. Even then. Before Lena could respond, Roman appeared in the doorway. Sir, we have a problem. Mussy. The problem was waiting in the entrance hall. A single black envelope, sealed with red wax, sitting on the marble floor like a landmine. No one had seen it delivered. The cameras showed nothing. One moment the hall was empty, the next the envelope was there. Lucien stood over it, hands clenched into fists. Don't touch it, Roman warned. It's not a bomb, Lucien said. Damien's too theatrical for explosives. He bent and picked up the envelope. The wax seal bore a symbol Lena didn't recognize. 2 serpents devouring each other in an endless circle. Lucien broke the seal and pulled out a single card. His face went white. What does it say? Lena asked. Lucien handed her the card without speaking. The message was written in elegant script. Dear brother, I've missed you. Let's talk. Tonight. The docks where Father's empire began. Come alone, or she dies screaming. Your loving brother, D. Lena's hands started shaking. He knows I'm here. He knows everything, Lucien said, his voice hollow. Celine gave him complete access. Floor plans, security schedules, every detail about our lives. What are you going to do? Lucien took the card back, staring at his brother's handwriting like it was a ghost made real. I'm going to meet him. Alone? Lena's voice cracked. He'll kill you. He'll try. Lucien. This ends tonight, Lucien turned to Roman. Lock down the estate. No one in or out except me. Double the guards on Lena. Arm everyone. Sir, if this is a trap, it's definitely a trap, Lucien said, but it's also the only way to draw him out. Roman's jaw tightened, but he nodded and left to carry out the orders. Lena grabbed Lucien's arm before he could follow. Don't do this, she said. Please, there has to be another way. Lucien looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then slowly covered it with his own. There isn't, he said quietly. Damien won't stop until one of us is dead. I'd rather it be him. What if it's you? Then Roman has instructions to get you somewhere safe. I don't want safe, Lena said, her voice breaking. I want you alive. Lucien's expression cracked just for a second, showing the raw terror beneath his control. Why? He asked. Because somewhere between the cold ceremonies and hostile dinners and late-night confrontations, you became the only real thing in my life. But she couldn't say that. Not now. Not when he was about to walk into a trap that would probably kill him. Because you're my husband, she said instead. It was the truth. Just not all of it. Lucien pulled his hand away gently. Stay in my quarters. Don't leave for any reason. If something happens to me, Roman will take care of you. I don't want Roman, I want... But Lucien was already walking away, his footsteps echoing through the hall like a countdown she couldn't stop. The hours crawled past like torture. Lena paced Lucien's quarters while armed guards stood outside the door. She tried reading, tried sleeping, tried not thinking about what was happening at the docks. All of it failed. By 10 o'clock, she was vibrating with anxiety. By 11, she'd made a decision. She couldn't just sit here waiting to find out if Lucien was dead. Lena opened the door to find 2 guards stationed in the hallway. I need to see Roman, she said. One of them shook his head. Mr. Devereaux's orders. You stay inside. I'm not asking permission. Get Roman. Now. The guards exchanged glances. Finally, one of them pulled out a radio. 5 minutes later, Roman appeared, his expression thunderous. Mrs. Devereaux, I need to go to the docks, Lena said. Absolutely not. Damien wants me dead. That means I'm leverage. If Lucien's walking into a trap, I should be there to... To what? Roman interrupted. Get yourself killed? Give Damien exactly what he wants? To help. You'll help by staying alive, Roman said flatly. That's the only thing Mr. Devereaux asked of you. He asked me to survive, not to hide. Roman's jaw tightened. The answer is no. He turned to leave. What if they kill him? Lena called after him. Roman stopped. What if Damien kills Lucy Zhen, and you're standing here guarding an empty room while your boss dies alone? Roman turned slowly, his expression unreadable. Mr. Devereaux gave me explicit orders. Fuck his orders, Lena said, surprised by the venom in her own voice. I'm his wife. That means something whether he wants to admit it or not. And I'm not sitting here waiting to become a widow. For a long moment, Roman just stared at her. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Get a car ready, he said into the phone, and bring Mrs. Devereaux body armor. Checks. The dock sat at the edge of the city like a graveyard of rusted metal and broken dreams. Lena sat in the back seat of an armored SUV, wearing a bulletproof vest that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, while Roman drove with one hand and kept the other on his gun. When we get there, Roman said, you stay in the car, windows up, doors locked. If shooting starts, you get on the floor and you don't move until I come get you. Understood? Understood. I'm serious, Mrs. Devereaux. You don't play hero. You don't run toward danger. You survive. That's what everyone keeps telling me. Because it's the only thing that matters. They drove in silence through empty streets until the harbor appeared ahead. Black water stretching toward nothing, warehouses looming like dead giants against the sky. Roman killed the headlights and parked 100 yards from the main pier. In the distance, Lena could see figures moving under a single flickering streetlight. Two men facing each other, Lucien and someone she'd never seen before but knew instantly. Damien. Even from this distance, the resemblance was obvious. Same height, same build. But where Lucien moved with controlled precision, Damien radiated chaos, gesturing wildly, pacing, laughing at something Lena couldn't hear. Stay here, Roman said, checking his weapon. Do not get out of this car. He slipped out and moved toward the pier, staying low and hidden in shadows. Lena pressed herself against the window, watching. The brothers were talking now. She couldn't hear the words, but she could see the tension in Lucien's shoulders, the way Damien kept circling him like a predator. Then Damien pulled something from his jacket. A gun. Lena's heart stopped, but Damien didn't point it at Lucien. He set it on the ground between them, some kind of offering or challenge. Lucien said something. Damien laughed. Then everything exploded into chaos. Figures emerged from the warehouses. 6, 8, 10 armed men surrounding Lucien in seconds. No, Lena breathed. Roman opened fire from his hidden position. The sound cracked through the night like thunder. Lucien dove for the gun Damien had placed, came up shooting, dropped 2 men before they could react. But there were too many. Lena watched in horror as one of Damien's men tackled Lucien from behind, slamming him to the ground. Another kicked the gun from his hand. Roman was pinned down behind a shipping container, taking fire from 3 directions, and Damien stood in the center of it all, watching his brother get beaten with a smile on his face. Lena's hand shook as she reached for the door handle. Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden. But Lucien was dying, and she'd already lost too much to lose him too. She opened the door and ran. But the moment her feet hit pavement, someone shouted. Lena didn't stop. She sprinted toward the pier, her vest weighing her down, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Damien saw her first. His expression transformed from cruel satisfaction to shocked delight. Well, well, he called out. The little bride comes to watch. Lucien's head snapped up from where he was being held on his knees, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. When he saw Lena, the fear that crossed his face was more terrifying than anything she'd ever seen. Lena, run! He shouted. But 2 of Damien's men were already moving toward her. She tried to turn, tried to flee, but they caught her within seconds. Hands grabbed her arms, dragged her forward, threw her down beside Lucien. She hit the concrete hard, her vision blurring. Let her go, Lucien growled, struggling against the men holding him. This is between us. No, brother, Damien said, crouching down until he was eye level with them both. This stopped being between us the moment you decided to care about something other than power. He reached out and grabbed Lena's chin, forcing her to look at him. Up close, Damien was like a funhouse mirror version of Lucien. Same gray eyes, same sharp features, but twisted into something mocking and cruel. "She's pretty," Damien said. "I can see why you kept her. Though I have to ask, Lucien, does she know what you really are? Does she know about the bodies, the people you've destroyed, the empire you built on corpses?" "Let her go," Lucien repeated, his voice shaking with barely restrained rage. "Or what?" Damien released Lena's chin and stood. "You'll kill me? You already tried that once. Didn't take. You should have stayed dead." "I should have killed you 10 years ago." Damien pulled his own gun, pointing it lazily at Lucien's head. "But father always protected you. His favorite son. His heir. The one who got everything while I got scraps." "You got exactly what you earned," Lucien said coldly. "I earned a throne." Damien's voice exploded into rage. "I earned respect and power and fear, but you took it all because you were born 2 years earlier." "I took it because you were weak." Damien's hand tightened on the gun. "Say that again." "You were weak." Lucien's eyes burned with hatred. "You wanted power without sacrifice, control without discipline. You wanted to be feared without earning it. That's why father chose me. That's why you'll always be nothing." For a moment, Lena thought Damien would shoot him. Instead, he laughed, high and broken and completely unhinged. "You think you won?" Damien asked. "You think marrying this girl and building your perfect empire means you beat me?" He turned the gun toward Lena. "Let's test that theory." Lucien lunged forward, but the men holding him slammed him back down. "Don't," Lucien said, and for the first time Lena heard pure terror in his voice. "Please, Damien, don't." "Begging?" Damien's eyes went wide with delight. "The great Lucien Devereaux is begging. For her." He pressed the gun against Lena's temple. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at Lucien while cold metal kissed her skin. "I'll give you anything," Lucien said, his voice breaking. "The estate, the businesses, everything. Just let her go." "Everything?" Damien repeated. "Your entire empire for one girl?" "Yes." The word came out raw and desperate and completely honest. Damien stared at his brother like he was seeing him for the first time. "You really do love her," he said quietly. "You actually fell in love with your contracted bride." Lucien didn't deny it. Damien pulled the gun away from Lena's head and started laughing again. "This is perfect," he said. "This is better than I ever imagined. You built yourself into a monster and then fell in love like a goddamn fairy tale." He turned to his men. "Take her." "No!" Lucien roared, fighting against the hands holding him with savage desperation. But there were too many. They hauled Lena to her feet, dragging her backward while she screamed and kicked and fought. "Let me go, Lucien!" "I'm going to keep her," Damien said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "As insurance, to make sure you sign over everything you own. And then, when I have it all, I'm going to kill her in front of you so you understand what it feels like to lose everything." "I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth," Lucien said, his voice shaking with rage. "I'll burn down every city, kill everyone you've ever known. There will be nowhere you can hide." "I'm counting on it," Damien smiled, "because a man consumed by revenge makes mistakes, and mistakes get you killed." He nodded to his men. They started dragging Lena toward a black van parked near the warehouse. Lena fought them every step, her voice raw from screaming Lucien's name. Gunfire suddenly erupted from the shadows, Roman finally breaking through, firing with surgical precision. 2 of Damien's men dropped. In the chaos, Lucien broke free, slamming his elbow into one guard's face and grabbing a fallen weapon. He came up shooting, dropping another man, then another. But Damien was already moving, dragging Lena with him toward the van. "Lucien!" she screamed. He ran after them, but more men poured from the warehouse, blocking his path. Damien shoved Lena into the van and climbed in after her. The last thing she saw before the door slammed shut was Lucien fighting his way through armed men, blood on his face, terror in his eyes. Then the van was moving, tires screeching, and Lena was trapped in darkness with a man who wanted to destroy everything she'd somehow learned to care about. Boosh. The van drove for what felt like hours. Lena sat on a metal bench, hands zip-tied behind her back, while Damien lounged across from her like they were old friends catching up. "You know," he said, "I genuinely didn't expect you to run toward danger. Most people run away." Lena said nothing. The strong, silent type. How refreshing. Damien leaned forward. Tell me, Lena, do you actually love my brother? Or are you just terrified of what he'll do if you don't pretend? Fuck you. Damien laughed. There's that spine. I can see why Lucian kept you. Where are you taking me? Somewhere he'll never find you. Somewhere I can keep you alive just long enough to watch him sign over everything he's built. He'll kill you first. He'll try, Damien agreed, but he'll be too busy grieving to think clearly. Grief makes people stupid, and stupid people die. The van finally stopped. The doors opened to reveal an abandoned factory, all rusted metal and broken windows. Damien's men dragged Lena out and into the building, down concrete stairs that descended into darkness, until they reached a basement that smelled like mold and old blood. They chained her to a support beam and left. Damien crouched in front of her, studying her face like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. You really got under his skin, he said. In all the years I've known Lucian, I've never seen him afraid of anything. But tonight, when I put that gun to your head, he looked like his world was ending. Because he's not a monster, Lena said. Not like you. Oh, sweetheart. Damien's smile was pure poison. We're both monsters. I just enjoy it more. He stood and walked toward the stairs. Someone will bring you food and water. Can't have you dying before the show. And don't bother screaming. We're 3 stories underground and surrounded by industrial buildings. No one will hear you. He left her alone in the darkness. Lena pulled against the chains until her wrists bled, but they didn't budge. She'd run toward danger to save Lucian, and now she was trapped in exactly the kind of hell he'd tried to protect her from. Hours passed in silence. Lena lost track of time in the windowless basement. Her wrists ached. Her body screamed from being forced into an uncomfortable position. But worse than the physical pain was the fear. Not for herself. For Lucian. She kept seeing his face when Damien had pointed the gun at her head. The absolute terror in his eyes. The way he'd offered everything to save her. Your entire empire for one girl. Yes. The word replayed in her mind on an endless loop. Lucien Devereaux. The man who'd married her as a contract. Who'd told her she was property. Who'd spent weeks treating her like an inconvenience. Had been willing to lose everything to keep her alive. The realization broke something inside her. She'd fallen in love with a monster. And somehow, he'd fallen in love with her, too. Footsteps echoed down the stairs. Lena's head snapped up, expecting Damien. Instead, a woman appeared. Mid-40s, severe features, dressed in tactical gear. Mrs. Devereaux, the woman said, we don't have much time. Who are you? Someone who owes your husband a debt. The woman pulled out a key and started unlocking the chains. Lucien saved my daughter's life 3 years ago. I've been waiting for a chance to repay him. The chains fell away. Lena rubbed her raw wrists, trying to process what was happening. He sent you. He doesn't know I'm here, the woman helped Lena stand. But he will. We need to move now before Damien realizes you're gone. Why are you helping me? The woman met her eyes. Because Lucien Devereaux has done terrible things. Unforgivable things. But he saved my little girl when no one else would. And that means I save his. She led Lena through the basement toward a service tunnel Damien's men hadn't bothered securing. They'd almost reached the exit when alarms started blaring. Run, the woman shouted. They burst through a rusted door into an alley behind the factory. A car was waiting, engine running. The woman shoved Lena into the back seat. Get her to Devereaux Estate, she told the driver. Don't stop for anything. What about you? Lena asked. The woman smiled grimly. I'm going to buy you time. She slammed the door shut. The car peeled away from the curb just as Damien's men poured into the alley behind them. Lena twisted in her seat, watching through the rear window as the woman who'd saved her opened fire, holding off an army to give her a chance to escape. Don't look, the driver said quietly. But Lena couldn't look away. She watched until the alley disappeared behind buildings, until she couldn't see the woman anymore, until the only thing visible was city lights blurring past like tears. She'd been saved by a stranger who'd sacrificed herself. For Lucien, because even monsters could inspire loyalty. The car pulled through the estate gates just as dawn broke. Roman was waiting at the entrance, gun drawn, flanked by a dozen armed guards. When he saw Lena, His expression cracked with relief. How? Someone help me, Lena said, climbing out of the car on shaking legs. A woman. She said Lucien saved her daughter. Maria, Roman breathed. She was one of ours years ago. Is Lucien inside? Roman's jaw tightened. He's been tearing the city apart looking for you. Lena ran. Through the entrance hall, up the stairs, down corridors she'd memorized over the past weeks. She found him in his office, standing at the window, one hand pressed against the glass like he was trying to hold himself upright. Lucien, she said. He turned. The devastation on his face broke her heart. You're alive, he whispered. I'm alive. For a moment, they just stared at each other across the room. Then Lucien crossed the distance in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. His hands shook as they moved over her back, her hair, her face, like he needed to touch every part of her to believe she was real. I thought, his voice cracked. When they took you, I thought, I know, Lena said, her own hands gripping his shirt. I know. Lucien pulled back just enough to look at her, his gray eyes wet with something that looked like tears. I would have given him everything, he said. The empire, the estate, my life, all of it, for you. I know, Lena repeated. I love you, Lucien said, the words coming out raw and desperate. I don't know when it happened or how to stop it, but I love you and the thought of losing you. Lena kissed him. It was desperate and messy and tasted like blood and fear and relief, but it was real. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. We need to end this, Lena said. Your brother, this war, all of it. I know. How? Lucien's expression hardened into something terrifying. By giving Damien exactly what he wants, he said, and then taking everything from him. Gantz. The plan was insane. Lucien explained it to his inner circle, Roman, 4 of his most trusted lieutenants, and Lena. Damien wants the empire, Lucien said, spreading documents across his desk. So I'm going to give it to him. Publicly, legally. Transfer of all assets, all businesses, all holdings. Sir, one of the lieutenants said carefully. That's suicide. It's bait, Lucien corrected. Damien thinks he's won. He thinks he broke me. But the moment he takes possession, every underground faction that's been held in check by fear will see him as weak. They'll eat him alive. And if they don't, Roman asked, then we make sure they do. Lucien looked at Lena. But first I need Damien to believe he has leverage, which means I need to make him think Lena is still missing. Lena's stomach dropped. What? He can't know you escaped. If he does, he'll go to ground and we'll never find him. Lucien's voice was ice-cold calculation. We announce that you're still captive, that I'm broken, that I'm willing to sign over everything to get you back. And then? Then we arrange an exchange, me for you, in public, where he can't resist showing up to claim his victory. That's when we take him, Roman said. Lucien nodded. That's when we end this. What if something goes wrong? Lena asked. Lucien looked at her and the fear in his eyes was terrifying. Then you run, he said, and you don't look back. The announcement went out that afternoon. Lucien Devereaux, feared crime lord and untouchable king of the underground, was surrendering. All holdings transferred to his brother Damien, all businesses signed over, all territory abandoned, in exchange for one thing, Lena Calloway. The city exploded with the news. Every criminal faction, every rival syndicate, every ambitious lieutenant saw blood in the water. Lucien Devereaux had shown weakness, and in their world, weakness was death. Damien's response came within hours. A single message delivered to the estate gates. Tomorrow, noon, the cathedral ruins on 5th and Mason. Bring the papers. Come alone, or she dies. Lucien read the message and smiled, cold and predatory and completely terrifying. He took the bait, he said. Roman nodded grimly. Now we spring the trap. The cathedral ruins sat at the edge of the old quarter like a monument to forgotten faith. Lena had never seen it before. Stone walls crumbling, stained glass shattered, pews rotting beneath a ceiling that had collapsed decades ago. It looked like the kind of place where hope went to die. Perfect for a final confrontation. She was supposed to be hiding, supposed to be safe in the estate while Lucien walked into danger. But she'd spent too many weeks being protected to sit on the sidelines now. So she followed Roman's team as they moved into position around the ruins, finding cover in abandoned buildings and behind debris, setting up the trap that would end Damien Devereaux. "You shouldn't be here," Roman said when he spotted her crouched behind a half-collapsed wall. "Neither should you. I'm following orders." "So am I," Lena said. "Lucien told me to survive, and I can't do that if he's dead." Roman's expression softened slightly. "He's going to be furious. He can be furious after we win." Noon approached like a countdown to execution. At exactly 12, a black car pulled up to the cathedral entrance. Lucien stepped out alone, carrying a leather briefcase. Lena's heart clenched at the sight of him, perfectly composed, walking toward certain danger like he was heading into a business meeting. Damien appeared from inside the ruins, dragging someone with him. A woman, bound and gagged. But it wasn't Lena, it was the woman who'd saved her, Maria. Lena's blood went cold. "Something's wrong," she whispered. Roman pressed a finger to his earpiece, listening. "He knows. Damien knows you escaped." "Then why—" The ruins exploded. Not with fire, with armed men pouring from every shadow, every collapsed archway, every hidden corner. 30, 40, more. Damien had brought an army. "It's an ambush," Roman snarled. "Everyone move, now!" Gunfire erupted from all directions. Lena watched in horror as Lucien dove for cover, the briefcase flying from his hands. Roman's team opened fire, but they were outnumbered 3-1. Men screamed, bodies dropped. The ruins turned into a war zone. And in the center of it all, Damien stood laughing. "Did you really think I'd fall for that, brother?" he shouted over the chaos. "Did you think I was that stupid?" Lucien came up firing, dropping 2 of Damien's men with clinical precision. "You were stupid enough to come here," he shouted back. "So were you." Damien raised his gun and fired. The bullet caught Lucien in the shoulder. He spun and went down hard. Lena screamed. She didn't think, didn't plan, just ran. Bullets tore through the air around her as she sprinted across open ground toward where Lucien had fallen. "Lena, no!" Roman's voice behind her. But she was already there, dropping to her knees beside Lucien, her hands pressing against his shoulder where blood poured through his shirt. "You idiot!" she sobbed. "You absolute idiot!" Lucien stared up at her, shock and fury, and something like love warring across his face. "You were supposed to stay hidden," he gasped. "I don't take orders well." "I've noticed." Damien's shadow fell over them both. "Well," he said, pressing his gun against the back of Lena's head. "Isn't this touching?" Lena went still. Lucien's eyes locked on his brother with pure hatred. "Let her go, Damien. This is between us." "No," Damien said. "This is about ending you. Completely. And that means taking everything you love." The gun pressed harder against Lena's skull. She closed her eyes. Thought about her father. About the life she'd had before Lucien. About the man bleeding beneath her hands, who'd somehow become her entire world. The gunshot cracked through the air. But Lena didn't feel anything. She opened her eyes. Damien stood frozen, eyes wide with shock, a red stain spreading across his chest. Behind him, Maria stood holding a smoking gun, her face covered in blood. "For my daughter," she said. Damien fell. The battle stopped. Every one of Damien's men froze as their leader crumpled to the ground, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Lucien dragged himself upright, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder, and looked down at his brother. "You should have stayed dead," he said. Damien's mouth moved, trying to form words. But only blood came out. He died staring at the sky, alone, defeated, forgotten, exactly the way he feared. The aftermath felt like waking from a nightmare. Sirens wailed in the distance. Roman's team swept the area, securing weapons and survivors. Maria collapsed against a wall, the gun falling from her shaking hands. And Lena sat beside Lucien while a medic worked on his shoulder, her own hand still covered in his blood. "You saved my life," Lucien said quietly. "You've saved mine about 6 times now," Lena replied. "I figured I owed you. We're not keeping score." "We should start." Lucien looked at her, really looked at her. and something in his expression cracked. "I love you," he said again, like he needed her to understand the weight of it. "Even if it destroys me, even if it makes me weak, I love you." Lena took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Then we'll be weak together," she said. The medic finished bandaging Lucian's shoulder and stepped back. Roman appeared, his expression grim. "It's over, sir. Damien's men are surrendering or running. The Empire is yours again." Lucian nodded slowly, exhaustion written across every line of his face. "Burn it," he said. Roman froze. "Sir? The Empire? The territories? All of it." Lucien stood with Lena's help, swaying slightly. "I'm done. But I spent 10 years building something my father would be proud of," Lucian said, "and it almost cost me everything that actually matters. So burn it down. Distribute the assets. Free anyone who wants out." He looked at Lena. "I'm choosing her," he said, "over all of it." Lena's eyes filled with tears. Roman stared at his boss like he was seeing a stranger. "What will you do?" he asked finally. Lucian's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Learn how to be human again," he said. He turned to Lena, pulling her close with his good arm. "If you'll have me?" Lena kissed him, gentle this time, tender, full of promises neither of them knew how to keep, but would try anyway. "I'll have you," she whispered against his lips. Around them, the ruins of the cathedral stood as testament to the violence they'd survived. But for the first time since Lena had signed that contract, she wasn't looking at the destruction. She was looking at the man who'd burned his entire world down to keep her in it, and realizing that sometimes love wasn't about building empires. It was about being brave enough to walk away from them. The declaration lasted exactly 12 hours before everything went to hell. Lucien's announcement that he was dismantling the empire spread through the underground like wildfire. By sunset, every lieutenant, every associate, every criminal faction that had operated under the Devereaux name was scrambling to claim territory he'd abandoned. Blood hit the streets before midnight. Lena watched it unfold from Lucien's office while medics finished treating his shoulder. News reports flashed across multiple screens. Gang violence erupting in the warehouse district, shootouts near the docks, fires burning in neighborhoods that had been peaceful under Lucien's iron control. "This is what happens when you remove a king," Roman said grimly, standing beside her at the window. "The kingdom tears itself apart." "He didn't want to be king anymore," Lena said. "Doesn't matter. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does crime." Lucian emerged from the bedroom wearing a fresh shirt, his left arm in a sling. His face was pale from blood loss, but his eyes burned with focus. "How bad?" he asked. 7 dead in the first 2 hours, Roman reported. 15 wounded. 3 territories actively at war. The Collins Syndicate is moving on the eastern ports. The Volkov brothers are claiming the casino operations. Everyone thinks you're weak. I am weak, Lucian said flatly. That's the point. Sir, I told you, I'm done. Lucian crossed to his desk and started pulling files from drawers. Distribute the clean assets to the families who worked for them. The dirty money goes to legal defense funds for anyone we put in prison. The weapons caches get reported to the police anonymously. Roman stared at him like he'd lost his mind. You're dismantling 30 years of infrastructure. I'm burning down a legacy I never wanted. My father built an empire on corpses and called it success, Lucian interrupted, his voice cold. I spent a decade maintaining it because I thought that's what strength looked like. But strength isn't holding on to something that's destroying you. It's knowing when to let go. He looked at Lena. I'm letting go. The words should have felt like victory. Instead, they felt like the calm before a storm. Okay. The first real threat came at 3 a.m. Lena was asleep in Lucian's bed, their bed now, though neither of them had said it out loud, when alarm shrieked through the estate. She jolted awake to find Lucian already moving, pulling a gun from his nightstand despite his injured shoulder. Stay here, he ordered. What's happening? Someone's trying to get inside. He was gone before she could respond. Lena threw on clothes and followed, ignoring his command because staying still felt like dying slowly. She found chaos in the security office, guards scrambling, monitors showing armed figures breaching the outer gates. Roman barking orders into a radio while Lucian studied the screens with deadly focus. "Who are they?" Lucian asked. "Colin's syndicate," Roman said. 20 men, maybe more. They're coming for the estate." "Why?" "Because you announced you're weak," Roman said bluntly. "And they want everything you own before someone else takes it." Lucian's jaw tightened. "Seal the house. Get everyone armed. We're outnumbered. Then we make every shot count." Lena stepped into the room. "How long until they reach us?" Lucian spun. "I told you to stay upstairs. And I told you I don't take orders well." Lena crossed her arms. "How long?" 5 minutes, Roman said, checking his weapon. "Maybe less." "Then we need to evacuate," Lena said. "No." Lucian's tone was absolute. "This is my house. I'm not running from it." "You just said you were letting go of the Empire, not my home." His eyes burned. "There's a difference." Gunfire erupted outside. The sound of bullets hitting stone walls echoed through the mansion like thunder. "They're at the front entrance," Roman said. "We need to move. Now." Lucian grabbed Lena's hand and pulled her into the hallway. They ran through corridors she'd memorized over the past weeks, but everything felt different in the darkness, with gunfire echoing behind them. Guards took positions at strategic points, weapons raised, faces grim. This wasn't a business transaction. This was war. Lucian led her to a reinforced safe room hidden behind his office. Steel walls, independent ventilation, enough supplies to last days. "Get inside," he said. "No." "Lena, I'm not hiding while you die defending a house." Her voice shook. "I already did that once. It almost destroyed me." Lucien's expression cracked. "I can't protect you if you're in the line of fire." "Then stop trying to protect me and let me fight beside you." "You don't know how, but so teach me." For a moment, Lucien just stared at her. Then he pulled a handgun from his jacket and pressed it into her hands. "Safety off, point, squeeze, don't pull." His voice was clipped, urgent. "If someone comes at you who isn't me or Roman, you shoot until they stop moving. Understood?" Lena's hands shook as she gripped the weapon. "Understood." An explosion rocked the mansion. The lights flickered and died. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in red emergency lighting that made the hallways look like arteries bleeding. "They're inside," Roman's voice crackled over the radio. "East wing, moving toward the main house." Lucien grabbed Lena's free hand. "Stay behind me. Move when I move. Stop when I stop. If I tell you to run, you run." "Lucien, promise me." She met his eyes. "I promise." They moved through the darkened mansion like ghosts, Lucien leading with his weapon raised despite his injured shoulder. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound could be death approaching. They found Roman holding position at the grand staircase with 4 guards. "Status?" Lucian asked. "They breached through the conservatory. 12 men inside. The rest are still trying to break through the perimeter." Roman's face was carved from stone. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before they reach this position. Then we hold here." "Sir, we should fall back." "We hold," Lucian repeated. "This is the defensible position, high ground, limited approaches. We make them pay for every step." Roman nodded grimly and turned to his men. "You heard him. Nothing gets past this staircase." The guards took positions behind marble pillars and overturned furniture that had been hastily converted into barricades. Lena crouched beside Lucien behind a stone column, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Good," Lucien said. "Fear keeps you sharp." "Is this what your life was like? Before me?" "Every day." He glanced at her, something sad flickering behind his eyes. "This is what I wanted to leave behind." "Then why are we fighting for it?" "Because some things are worth defending." His hand found hers. "And you're one of them." Before Lena could respond, figures appeared at the far end of the hallway. "Contact!" Roman shouted. The world exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from both sides, deafening in the enclosed space. Bullets chewed through marble and wood. Glass shattered. Men screamed. Lena pressed herself against the column, the gun heavy in her shaking hands, while Lucien returned fire with cold precision. One of the guards went down, then another. "Fall back," Roman ordered. "Second floor!" They retreated up the staircase, firing as they moved. Lena stumbled on the stairs, her ears ringing from the gunfire. Lucien caught her with his good arm and hauled her upward. At the second-floor landing, they regrouped. Only 3 guards left now. Roman bleeding from a cut above his eye. Lucien's shoulders seeping through his bandages. "We can't hold them," one of the guards said, his voice shaking. "We don't have to hold them," Lucien said. "We just have to slow them down long enough for reinforcements to arrive." "What reinforcements?" Roman asked. "The ones I called 30 minutes ago." As if summoned, sirens wailed in the distance. The attackers heard it too. Their advance hesitated. "Police?" Lena breathed. "Better," Lucien said. "Federal agents. I made some calls while you were sleeping. Turns out when you offer to testify against every corrupt official in the city, people become very interested in keeping you alive." Roman stared at him. "You're cooperating with the feds?" "I'm ending this," Lucien said. "Permanently." The sirens grew louder. Shouting echoed from downstairs as the attackers realized they were trapped between Lucien's position and incoming law enforcement. Some tried to flee. Others decided to fight their way through. The battle intensified. A man appeared at the top of the stairs. Lucien shot him twice. He fell backward, taking another attacker with him, but more kept coming. Lena watched in horror as Roman took a bullet to the leg and went down hard. "Roman!" she screamed. Lucien grabbed her. "Stay down!" But she was already moving, crawling across the floor toward Roman while bullets tore through the air above her. She reached him just as another attacker rounded the corner. The man raised his gun. Lena raised hers, safety off. Point, squeeze. The recoil nearly broke her wrist, but the bullet found its target. The man dropped. Lena stared at his body, shaking so badly she could barely hold the weapon. "Good shot," Roman gasped through gritted teeth. Federal agents poured through the front entrance. The gunfire stopped. Orders shouted. Hands raised. Attackers surrendering or trying to run. It was over in less than 2 minutes. Lena sat on the floor beside Roman, her ears ringing, her hands still shaking, while federal agents in tactical gear swept through the mansion. Lucien appeared beside her, pulling her into his arms. "You saved his life," he said. "I killed someone," Lena whispered. "You survived." Lucien's voice was fierce. "That's all that matters." But his eyes said something different. His eyes said, "This is my fault." The federal agents took statements while medics treated the wounded. Lena sat wrapped in a blanket despite the warm night, watching EMTs load Roman into an ambulance. The bullet had gone through his thigh. Painful, but not fatal. He'd be okay. Unlike the 3 guards who died defending the staircase. Unlike the man Lena had killed. She couldn't stop seeing his face, the shock in his eyes, the way he'd crumpled. "Mrs. Devereaux?" A woman in a dark suit stood in front of her. FBI, based on the badge clipped to her belt. "I'm Special Agent Torres," the woman said. "Your husband has agreed to cooperate with our investigation into organized crime in the city. We're going to need to ask you some questions." "About what?" "Everything you've seen since you married Lucien Devereaux." Lena's stomach dropped. "You want me to testify against him?" "We want you to testify against the infrastructure he built," Torres corrected. "Your husband is offering to dismantle it from the inside, but we need corroboration, details, names." "And if I refuse?" Torres's expression softened slightly. "Then you'll be subpoenaed. Better to cooperate voluntarily." She walked away before Lena could respond. Lucien found her an hour later sitting on the steps outside the mansion watching the sun rise over the destroyed estate. His shoulder had been rebandaged. His face looked 10 years older. "They want me to testify," Lena said. "I know." "Did you tell them to ask me?" "No." Lucien sat down beside her, moving carefully. "But I knew they would. You're a witness to everything that's happened. They need your statement." "What if I don't want to relive all of this?" "Then you don't." He took her hand. "I'll tell them to leave you out of it. They won't like it, but they'll do it." Lena stared at their joined hands. "What are you going to tell them?" "Everything." Lucien's voice was hollow. "Every deal, every crime, every person I've hurt. I'm going to burn it all down and make sure no one can rebuild it." "That'll put you in prison?" "Maybe." Or maybe they'll grant immunity in exchange for testimony that puts worse people away. He looked at her. Either way, I'm done being the monster. You were never a monster to me. Yes, I was. The admission came out raw. I bought you, owned you, treated you like property. I'm not going to pretend that was anything other than what it was. And now? Now I'm trying to be the man you deserve instead of the one my father made me. Lena leaned her head against his good shoulder. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be real. I don't know if I remember how. Then we'll figure it out together. They sat in silence, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, while federal agents moved through the ruins of Lucien's empire cataloging evidence. For the first time in weeks, Lena felt something like peace. It didn't last. The call came 3 days later while they were meeting with federal prosecutors. Lucien's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. I need to take this, he said, standing abruptly. Mr. Devereaux, we're in the middle of... One of the prosecutors started. I said I need to take this. He left the conference room, Lena following despite the protests behind them. In the hallway, Lucien answered the call and put it on speaker. Who is this? He demanded. A familiar laugh echoed through the line. Damien's laugh. Lena's blood went cold. Miss me, brother? Damien's voice was weak, distorted, but unmistakably alive. You're dead, Lucien said. I watched you die. You watched me get shot, Damien corrected. There's a difference. Turns out I'm harder to kill than you thought. Good genes, I suppose. We both got father's stubbornness. Lucien's hand tightened on the phone. Where are you? Somewhere you'll never find me, at least not until I'm ready to be found. Damien coughed, the sound wet and pained. But I wanted to call and thank you. Thank me? For proving me right. You destroyed everything for her, the empire, the legacy, your entire life's work, all for a girl you bought like furniture. What do you want, Damien? To let you know this isn't over. Damien's voice hardened. You think cooperating with the feds will save you? You think burning down the empire will make you clean? You're still a killer, Lucien. Still a monster. And monsters don't get happy endings. Is there a point to this call? The point is that you took everything from me twice, Damien said. First when father chose you. Then when you left me for dead. So now I'm going to spend whatever time I have left taking everything from you, starting with her. The line went dead. Lucien stared at the phone, his breathing ragged. He's alive, Lena whispered. He's alive, Lucien repeated, his voice hollow. But Maria shot him. We saw him fall. We didn't confirm the body. Lucien slammed his fist against the wall, then winced as pain flared through his injured shoulder. I was so focused on getting you to safety that I didn't make sure he was dead. So what do we do? Lucien turned to face her, and the fear in his eyes was absolute. We run, he said. We take the deal with the feds, enter witness protection, and disappear. For how long? Forever. The word landed like a death sentence. What about my father? Lena asked. He comes with us if he wants. Or he gets protection here. And your people? Roman? The staff? They get severance packages and references. I'm done putting people in danger. Lucien's voice cracked. I'm done with all of it. Agent Torres appeared at the end of the hallway. Mr. Devereaux? Is everything all right? My brother is alive, Lucien said, and he just threatened my wife. Torres's expression hardened. Then we need to move up the timeline. How soon can you testify? Tomorrow. Tomorrow it is. Torres pulled out her phone. I'll arrange protection, safe house, armed detail, whatever you need. I need my brother dead, Lucien said coldly. Can you arrange that? We're law enforcement, Mr. Devereaux, not assassins. Then I'll do it myself. Lucien, Lena said, grabbing his arm. You can't. He threatened you. Lucien's voice shook with barely restrained rage. He said he's going to take everything from me, starting with you. That means I end him before he gets the chance. And if you die trying, then at least you'll be safe. I don't want safe if it means losing you. Lena's voice broke. We've already lost so much. I'm not losing you too. Lucian pulled her close, his forehead pressed against hers. "Can't let him hurt you," he whispered. "Can't." "Then let the feds protect us. Testify. Disappear. Start over somewhere he can't find us." "You'd give up your life here? Your father? Everything you know?" "I already gave up everything when I married you," Lena said. "And I'd do it again. Because you're the only thing I can't lose." Lucien's control finally shattered. He kissed her desperately, his hands shaking as they framed her face, and Lena tasted salt and realized he was crying. When they broke apart, Agent Torres was discreetly looking away. "We'll enter protection," Lucian said. "All of it. New identities, new city, whatever it takes." "I'll start the paperwork," Torres said. "But, Mr. Devereaux, if your brother is alive, he's going to come after you. Witness protection only works if he doesn't know where you are." "He'll know," Lucien said grimly. "Damien always knows, but at least this time I'll see him coming." The safe house was a sterile apartment in a building no one would look at twice. Concrete walls, minimal furniture, windows that didn't open. Federal agents stationed outside every exit. Lena hated it immediately. But Lucien moved through the space like it was exactly what he expected, checking sight lines, testing door locks, memorizing escape routes. "We'll be here 3 days," he said. "Then we testify, sign the protection agreements, and disappear." Just like that. Just like that. Lena sat on the industrial couch that felt like it had been designed to be uncomfortable. "What will our new names be?" "We get to choose within reason." "Can I still be Lena?" Lucian looked at her, something soft crossing his face. "If you want." "I do. Everything else can change, but I want to keep my name." "Then Lena it is." He sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "I'm sorry," he said after a long silence. "For what?" "All of it. The contract. The marriage. Dragging you into this war. You should have had a normal life. College. Career. Someone who loved you without all this violence attached." "I don't want normal," Lena said. "Normal is boring. Normal doesn't make me feel alive." "This is alive? This is real." She turned to face him. "You're real. Flawed and damaged and absolutely terrifying sometimes, but real. And I'd rather have real and dangerous than safe and empty." Lucian pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I love you," he said, "even if I don't deserve to." "You do deserve it. You just don't believe you do." "Maybe I'll learn. We have time now, all the time in the world." But even as she said it, Lena felt the lie. They didn't have time. Damien was still out there, and men like him didn't give up. The attack came on the second night. Lena woke to the sound of gunfire and Lucian already moving, grabbing weapons from the bag he'd kept beside the bed. "Stay down," he ordered. Through the walls she heard shouting, agents calling for backup, more gunfire. "He found us," Lena said. "He found us," Lucian confirmed grimly. The door to their apartment exploded inward. Smoke grenades followed, filling the room with choking white clouds. Lucien fired blind, his shots precise despite the chaos. Someone screamed. Then hands grabbed Lena, dragging her backward through the smoke. She fought, kicking and clawing, but whoever held her was stronger. "Lucien!" she screamed. His response was drowned out by an explosion that rocked the entire building. The world tilted sideways. Lena hit the ground hard, her vision blurring. When it cleared, she was being dragged down a stairwell by 2 masked men. Behind her, the apartment building burned, and somewhere in that inferno, Lucian was fighting his way toward her, if he was still alive. They threw her into the back of a van. Lena's head cracked against metal. Stars exploded across her vision. By the time she could focus again, the van was moving, tires screeching through turns that threw her against the walls. One of the masked men pulled off his covering, not one of Damien's soldiers. Damien himself, pale, bleeding from a barely healed wound in his chest, but alive and smiling like death itself. "Hello again, sister-in-law," he said. Lena lunged at him. He backhanded her casually, sending her sprawling. "Spirit," he said approvingly, "I can see why Lucien kept you. Though I have to admit, I didn't expect you to actually care about him. Most people see the monster and run." "Where are you taking me?" Somewhere we can have a proper conversation. Somewhere Lucien will come find you." Damien leaned back against the van wall, one hand pressed to his wounded chest. "Because he will come. That's the thing about love. It makes people predictable. He'll kill you. Maybe. Or maybe I'll kill him first. Either way, one of us isn't leaving this alive." Damien's smile widened. "And you get a front row seat." The van drove for what felt like hours. When it finally stopped, Lena was dragged out into darkness. She recognized the location immediately. The cathedral ruins where Damien had died the first time. Except this time, the entire area was surrounded by armed men. At least 40. Maybe more. All of them loyal to Damien. All of them waiting for Lucien to walk into the trap. "Welcome to the endgame," Damien said, shoving Lena toward the center of the ruins. "Let's see if your husband loves you enough to die for you." They chained her to one of the remaining stone pillars. Damien stood in front of her, checking his weapons with methodical care. "He'll bring the feds," Lena said. "He'll come alone, because if he doesn't, I'll start cutting pieces off you and sending them to him." Damien smiled. "Don't worry, I'll start with fingers. Save the important parts for last." Lena's blood went cold. "You're insane." "I'm committed. There's a difference." Damien crouched in front of her. "You know what the funny thing is? I actually like you. You've got spine, courage, everything I wished my brother had before you softened him." Lucien was never soft. No, but he was smart, calculating. Now he's emotional, reactive, human. Damien's expression darkened. "And humans make mistakes." He stood and walked toward the center of the ruins. "When he gets here," Damien called over his shoulder, "try not to scream too much. I want him focused." Lena pulled against the chains until her wrists bled, but they didn't budge. She was trapped. Bait in a trap that would kill the only person she'd ever loved, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Lucien arrived 2 hours later. Lena heard the car before she saw it. A single vehicle approaching through the ruins. No sirens, no backup, no federal agents, just Lucien. Alone. "He actually came," Damien breathed, sounding almost disappointed. "I half expected him to cut his losses." The car stopped at the edge of the ruins. Lucien stepped out, both hands visible, no weapons drawn. But Lena could see the bulge of guns beneath his jacket, see the tension in his shoulders, see the cold calculation in his eyes as he assessed every position, every angle, every threat. "Brother," Damien called out, "welcome to the party!" Lucien walked forward slowly, his eyes locked on Lena. She wanted to scream at him to run, to save himself, to let her die if it meant he survived. But her throat was too tight to form words. Lucien stopped 20 feet from where Damien stood. "Let her go," he said. "No. This is between us. She's not part of it. She became part of it when you fell in love with her." Damien gestured to the armed men surrounding them. "You see all these people? They're here because I promised them a share of your empire once you're dead. And you're going to die, Lucien. The only question is whether she dies with you." "What do you want?" "I want you to suffer," Damien said simply. "The way I suffered. Burned. Abandoned. Left for dead while you built an empire on the ashes of my life. You tried to kill me, and I should have succeeded," Damien's voice cracked with rage. "But Father protected you even then. Sent me into that fire and told everyone I was dead so you could inherit everything clean. Father was a monster. Father was a king." Damien pulled his gun. "And you're just the coward who stole his throne." Lucien's hands moved faster than Lena thought possible. He drew and fired in one fluid motion. The bullet caught Damien in the shoulder, spinning him backward. But Damien's men opened fire instantly. Lucien dove behind a collapsed wall as bullets chewed through stone. Lena screamed his name. The gunfight erupted with horrifying intensity. Lucien moved through the ruins like a ghost, firing from cover, dropping men with surgical precision. But there were too many. For every one he killed, 2 more appeared. Damien staggered to his feet, clutching his bleeding shoulder, his face twisted with fury. "Kill him!" he screamed. "I want him dead!" Lucien fought with everything he had. But Lena could see he was losing, wounded, outnumbered, running out of ammunition. He glanced at her once across the chaos. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Lena saw him make a choice. He was going to sacrifice himself to save her. No, she whispered. Lucien stood up from cover, fully exposed, and raised his weapon toward Damien. Every gun in the ruins turned toward him. Time seemed to slow. Lena watched Damien smile, watched dozens of fingers tighten on triggers, watched Lucien stand there like a king facing execution with his head held high. And then the world exploded into chaos as federal agents poured into the ruins from every direction, helicopters roaring overhead, spotlights turning night into day. FBI, drop your weapons! Damien's men hesitated, caught between loyalty and self-preservation. Lucien used the distraction. He ran toward Damien, weapon raised, murder in his eyes. Damien fired. The bullet caught Lucien in the chest. He went down hard. Lena's scream tore through the air louder than any gunshot. Federal agents swarmed the ruins, taking down Damien's men one by one. But Lena only saw Lucien lying motionless on the ground, blood spreading across his shirt. Someone unlocked her chains. She ran, dropped to her knees beside Lucien and pressed her hands against his chest, trying to stop the bleeding. No, 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 she sobbed. You don't get to die. You promised me. You promised. Lucien's eyes fluttered open. He looked at her and smiled, small and broken and real. I love you, he whispered. Don't you dare, Lena said through tears. Don't you fucking dare say goodbye. Not goodbye, Lucien gasped. Just in case. Medics appeared, pushing Lena aside, working on Lucien with desperate efficiency. She sat in the dirt watching them fight to save him, covered in his blood, and realized she was screaming. Across the ruins, federal agents dragged Damien away in handcuffs. He was laughing. Even bleeding and beaten and arrested, he was laughing. Because whether Lucien lived or died, Damien had already won. He'd broken something inside both of them that could never be repaired. The helicopter lifted off with Lucien inside. Lena watched it disappear into the night sky, carrying the man she loved toward an uncertain fate. And for the first time since she'd signed that contract, she broke completely. Collapsed in the ruins and sobbed like the world was ending, because for all she knew, it was. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Lena sat in a plastic chair with Lucien's blood still drying on her hands, staring at white walls that seemed to close in with every passing second. Federal agents had tried to get her to change clothes, wash up, give a statement. She'd refused all of it. Not until she knew if he was alive. Agent Torres appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Devereaux, is he alive? Lena interrupted. Torres hesitated. He's in surgery. The bullet missed his heart by 2 inches, punctured his lung, caused significant internal bleeding. The doctors are doing everything they can. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have right now. Lena's hands clenched into fists. Where's Damien? In custody. He'll be arraigned tomorrow on multiple charges, including attempted murder, kidnapping, and about 40 other counts we're still compiling. Torres sat down beside her. He's not getting out, ever. Good. We need your statement, Torres said gently. Everything that happened, everything you saw. Later. Mrs. Devereaux. I said later. Lena's voice cracked. I'm not leaving this hospital until I know if my husband is going to live or die. After that, I'll tell you whatever you want, but not before. Torres studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right. I'll be outside if you need anything. She left Lena alone with the sound of her own heartbeat and the antiseptic smell of a place where people came to either heal or die. Hours crawled past. Lena watched nurses move through hallways with practiced efficiency, watched other families receive news good and bad, watched the world continue turning while hers hung suspended in uncertainty. Dawn was breaking through the windows when a surgeon finally appeared, still wearing scrubs, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Lena stood on legs that barely supported her weight. Is he alive? The surgeon said quickly. The surgery was successful. We removed the bullet, repaired the damage to his lung, stopped the internal bleeding. He's stable. Lena's knees nearly gave out. She grabbed the back of a chair to stay upright. Can I see him? He's in recovery, still unconscious from the anesthesia. But yes, you can see him. The surgeon's expression softened. He's going to need extensive rehabilitation. The damage was significant, but barring complications, he should make a full recovery. Thank you, Lena whispered. The surgeon led her through sterile corridors to a recovery room where Lucien lay surrounded by machines that beeped and hissed, monitoring every breath, every heartbeat. He looked smaller than she'd ever seen him. Vulnerable. Human. Tubes ran into his arms, bandages covered his chest. His face was pale beneath the oxygen mask, but his chest rose and fell with steady rhythm. He was alive. Lena pulled a chair beside his bed and took his hand carefully, mindful of the IV lines. You absolute idiot, she said softly. You got yourself shot saving me. Lucien didn't respond, just kept breathing in that steady mechanical rhythm. I need you to wake up, Lena continued, her voice breaking, because I'm not done being angry at you for walking into that trap. And I'm not done loving you either, so you don't get to die. Not after everything we survived. She pressed his hand against her cheek and let herself cry. Quiet, exhausted tears that felt like they came from somewhere deeper than grief. Relief, terror, love, rage. All of it mixed together into something she didn't have words for. Outside the window, the city woke to another day, and Lena sat beside the man who'd bought her freedom with his empire and held his hand while he fought his way back to life. Lucien woke 3 days later. Lena was dozing in the chair beside his bed when she heard him gasp. The sound of someone surfacing from deep water. Her eyes snapped open. Lucien stared at the ceiling, breathing hard, his hand instinctively reaching for weapons that weren't there. Hey, Lena said quickly, moving into his line of sight. You're okay. You're in the hospital. You're safe. His eyes found hers. Confusion flickered across his face, then memory, then something that looked like relief. Lena, he rasped, his voice destroyed from the breathing tube. I'm here. Damien, in custody, federal prison. He's never getting out. Lucien's eyes closed briefly. When they opened again, they were wet. I thought I lost you, he whispered. You almost did. Then the feds showed up like the cavalry and saved both of us. How did they know where to find us? Lena smiled through her tears. Apparently you called them before you left for the cathedral. Gave them your location, told them to wait 30 minutes, then move in. You set the whole thing up. I needed to draw out all of Damien's people, get them in one place where they could all be arrested at once. Lucien tried to sit up and immediately gasped in pain. Fuck. Don't move, Lena ordered, pressing him gently back down. You were shot in the chest. You're lucky to be alive. I don't feel lucky. You will. Eventually. She brushed hair back from his forehead. The doctor says you'll make a full recovery. It'll take months of rehabilitation, but you'll heal. Lucien stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Why are you still here? Where else would I be? Anywhere. You could have walked away the moment I went into surgery. The contract is void. Damien's arrested. You're free. Lena took his hand carefully. I don't want to be free from you. I want to be with you. There's a difference. Even after everything, especially after everything. She leaned down and kissed his forehead gently. You burned down your entire empire to keep me safe. You walked into a trap knowing you'd probably die. You fought 40 armed men to get to me. So yeah, I'm staying, and you're going to have to do a lot better than getting shot to make me leave. Lucien's breath hitched. I love you. I know. You told me. Right before you passed out. I meant it. I know that too. Lena smiled through her tears. And I love you back, even though you're an idiot who keeps almost dying. I'll try to stop doing that. Please do. My heart can't take much more. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Oh good, you're awake. Let me check your vitals. She bustled into the room, adjusting machines and checking readouts while Lena stepped back to give her space. But Lucien's hand stayed wrapped around hers the entire time, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Igeken. Recovery was slow and brutal. Lucien spent 2 weeks in the hospital before they cleared him for discharge. Even then, he could barely walk 20 feet without needing to rest. The bullet wound had done more damage than anyone wanted to admit. Agent Torres visited regularly, building the case against Damien and the remnants of his organization. Lena gave her statement over 3 separate sessions, reliving every moment from the contract signing to the final gunfight. By the end, she felt wrung out and hollow. "We have enough to put Damien away for multiple life sentences," Torres said during their final meeting. "Between your testimony, Lucien's cooperation, and the evidence we seized, he'll never see daylight again." "What about witness protection?" Lena asked. "Still available if you want it. New identities, relocation, full federal support." "And if we don't?" Torres studied her carefully. "Then you stay here and rebuild your lives under your real names. Damien won't be a threat anymore. Most of his organization has been dismantled. The few people still loyal to him will be too busy trying to avoid prosecution to come after you. What do you think we should do?" "Honestly?" Torres leaned back in her chair. "I think you've both spent too much time hiding who you are. Running won't fix that. It'll just delay dealing with it." After she left, Lena sat alone in the hospital room thinking about what it meant to stop running, to stay in a city that knew their names, to rebuild a life out of the ashes of violence, to be Lena and Lucien instead of whoever the federal government would have renamed them. When Lucien woke from his afternoon nap, she told him what Torres had said. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to stay," Lena said. "I want to keep my name and my life and figure out who I am when I'm not terrified. But I need to know you want that too." Lucien was quiet for a long time, staring at the ceiling. "I spent 30 years building an empire I hated," he said finally. "Playing a role my father designed for me, being the monster everyone expected. And it nearly destroyed us both. So what do you want now?" "To be nobody." The words came out soft, almost wondering. "Just some guy who used to be somebody, living a quiet life with the woman he loves. No power, no empire, no legacy. Just existence." "That sounds perfect," Lena whispered. "Even if I'm broke? Even if I have nothing to offer you except a criminal record and a body that barely works?" "Especially then." She took his hand. "I didn't fall in love with your empire. I fell in love with the man underneath it, the one who showed up in all the cracks when the armor started breaking." Lucien pulled her close, carefully, mindful of his healing wounds, and kissed her like they had all the time in the world. Maybe they did. For the first time in either of their lives, the future felt like possibility instead of threat. Sit. They left the hospital on a gray afternoon 3 weeks after the shooting. Roman was waiting at the entrance with a car, his legs still in a brace from the bullet he'd taken defending the estate. "Boss," he said, then caught himself. "Sorry, Lucien." "Roman." Lucien shook his hand carefully. "How's the leg?" "Better than your chest, I'm guessing." Roman's expression was carefully neutral. "Where do you want me to take you?" "The estate," Lucien said. "I need to see what's left." The drive took 40 minutes through a city that felt simultaneously familiar and alien. Lena watched neighborhoods pass by, some she recognized, some she'd never seen before, and wondered what it would be like to live here as a regular person instead of a crime lord's wife. The estate appeared at the end of the long driveway, looking like a war memorial. Bullet holes scarred the walls. Windows were boarded up. Scorch marks blackened the stone where fires had burned. The gates hung crooked on broken hinges. But it was still standing. Roman parked in front of the entrance and helped Lucien out of the car. They walked through rooms that had once been pristine and now looked like abandoned tombs. Furniture overturned, paintings riddled with bullets, bloodstains dried into the marble floors. "Most of the staff left," Roman said quietly. "I've been paying them severance from the emergency funds like you instructed." "Good. What do you want to do with the property?" Lucien stood in the center of the destroyed foyer, looking around at the ruins of everything he'd built. "Sell it," he said. "Whatever we get, distribute it to the families of everyone who died defending this place. The guards, Maria, everyone." "And what will you live on?" "I have some legitimate investments that weren't part of the criminal empire. A few real estate holdings. Some stock portfolios my father set up before he went completely crooked." Lucien smiled grimly. "Not much compared to what I used to have, but enough to live on if we're careful." "Where will you go?" Lucien looked at Lena. "Where do you want to go?" She thought about it, really thought about it, then realized the answer was obvious. "Somewhere we can see the ocean," she said. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can figure out who we are when we're not fighting to survive. The coast, then, Lucian said. Small town. Maybe one of those places where nobody cares who you used to be. Roman nodded slowly. I'll handle the sale. Get you the best price I can. What about you? Lena asked. What will you do? I've got some offers. Security consulting, private protection. Apparently having former head of security for Lucian Devereaux on your resume opens doors. Roman almost smiled. I'll land on my feet. They walked through the rest of the estate in silence, each room another reminder of the life they were leaving behind. When they reached Lucien's office, he stopped in the doorway. The room was destroyed, desk overturned, files scattered, windows shattered. But the painting on the wall, the dark landscape that had hung there for as long as Lena had known him, was still intact. Lucien walked to it and carefully removed it from the wall. Behind it was a safe. He opened it and pulled out a small wooden box. What is that? Lena asked. Something my mother gave me before she died. Lucien opened the box. Inside was a simple silver compass, tarnished with age. She told me if I ever got lost, this would help me find my way home. Did it? I never used it. I always knew where I was. He closed the box and slipped it into his pocket. But maybe it's time to start. They left the estate as the sun set behind the hills, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. Lena looked back once at the mansion growing smaller in the distance. It looked like a mausoleum, a monument to everything Lucien had been and everything they'd survived. And when it disappeared around a curve in the road, she didn't feel sad. She felt free. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Damien Devereaux faced 43 counts ranging from attempted murder to racketeering to kidnapping. The prosecution built their case methodically, using testimony from Lena, Lucien, Roman, and dozens of others whose lives had been destroyed by Damien's war. Lena testified for 3 days. She told them about the photograph, about being kidnapped, about watching Damien shoot Lucien in the chest and laugh while he bled. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Damien showed no reaction when the verdict was read, just sat there in his orange jumpsuit staring at Lucien across the courtroom with those cold gray eyes that looked so much like his brother's. At sentencing, the judge gave him 7 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. Do you have anything to say? The judge asked. Damien stood slowly. Just one thing. He turned to face Lucien and Lena sitting in the front row. You think you won, Damien said quietly. You think putting me in a cage means you get to ride off into the sunset and live happily ever after. But you're wrong. Because every time you look at each other, you'll remember what you did to get here. The people who died. The lives you destroyed. The monster you had to become to survive. His smile was pure poison. You'll never be clean, Damien said. No matter how far you run. No matter how many new names you take. You'll always be exactly what I am, and that knowledge will eat you alive. The bailiffs dragged him away before Lucien could respond, but Lena felt the words land like bullets. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them with questions they didn't answer. Federal agents cleared a path to a waiting car. Inside, Lucien sat rigid and silent while Lena held his hand. He's wrong, she said finally. Is he? We're not monsters. We're survivors. There's a difference. I killed people, Lena. So many people I lost count years ago. In self-defense. Protecting yourself and others. Some of them, maybe, but not all. Lucien's voice was hollow. Damien's right about one thing. I'll never be clean. Then we'll be dirty together, Lena said fiercely. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be real. And real means accepting what we've done and choosing to be better anyway. Lucien looked at her with something like wonder in his eyes. How are you not afraid of me? Because I know you, Lena said. The real you, not the role you played or the reputation you built. The man who ordered a second bed so I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. The man who gave up everything to keep me safe. That's who you are. Everything else is just history. History has a way of repeating itself. Not if we don't let it. The car pulled up to a small apartment they'd rented across town. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, nothing like the mansion but theirs in a way that place never was. Home. They climbed the stairs together, Lucien moving slowly, still healing, and closed the door on a world that wanted them to stay broken. Bach. 6 months later, they left the city entirely. Lena said goodbye to her father over coffee in his small apartment. He looked healthier than she'd seen him in years. Steady hands, clear eyes, color in his cheeks. "You're really leaving," he said. "We need a fresh start. Somewhere the past isn't waiting around every corner." "Will I see you again?" "Of course." Lena took his hands. "We'll visit. You'll visit. We're not disappearing, just relocating." Her father studied her face carefully. "You love him." "I do. Even knowing what he was?" "Especially knowing what he was. Because I also know what he's trying to become." Her father pulled her into a hug. "Then go. Be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you." They loaded everything they owned into a used pickup truck Lucien had bought with cash. Clothes, books, the compass his mother had given him, and not much else. Lena drove while Lucien navigated, his shoulders still too weak to handle long-distance driving. They headed north along the coast, through small towns with populations in the hundreds, past beaches where the ocean stretched toward forever. After 2 days, they found it. A small coastal town called Haven's Rest. Population 800, one main street, a harbor full of fishing boats. No one who recognized their names or cared about their past. They rented a cottage on the edge of town, small, weathered, with a porch that overlooked the water. The rent was cheap. The landlord asked no questions. "This is it," Lucien said, standing on the porch, watching waves crash against rocks. "This is where we start over." Lena wrapped her arms around him from behind, careful of his healing wounds. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I was thinking about opening a bookstore, something quiet, low-key, just books and coffee and normal life." A crime lord turned bookseller, very literary. "Former crime lord," Lucien corrected. "That person doesn't exist anymore." "Then who are you now?" He turned to face her, his gray eyes clear and calm for the first time since she'd known him. "Just Lucy Yen," he said. "Husband, reader, guy who's trying to figure out how to live without violence. That's enough." "More than enough," Lena said. She kissed him there on the porch while seagulls called overhead and salt air filled their lungs, and the past felt like something that had happened to different people in a different life. Because the bookstore opened 6 months later. They called it Second Chances. Half ironic, half honest. Lucien handled inventory and recommendations. Lena managed the coffee shop they built into the front corner. Together they created something that felt like peace. Customers trickled in slowly at first. Locals curious about the newcomers. Tourists looking for something to read on the beach. No one asked about their past. No one cared. In Haven's Rest, they were just the quiet couple who ran the bookstore and kept to themselves. Lena learned to make decent coffee. Lucien discovered he had opinions about literature he'd never had time to explore before. They fell into routines that felt mundane and miraculous. Morning walks on the beach, evening reading sessions on the porch, quiet dinners where they talked about nothing important. Normal life, the kind neither of them had ever experienced. One evening, almost a year after they'd arrived, Lena found Lucien standing at the water's edge watching the sunset. She joined him in silence. "Do you miss it?" she asked finally. "The power. The empire. Being feared." Lucien thought about it for a long time. "Sometimes," he admitted, "I miss the certainty, knowing exactly who I was and what I was capable of. There was a strange comfort in being the monster. But I don't miss what it cost. The violence, the paranoia, seeing everyone as either a threat or a tool." He took her hand. "And I don't miss the person I had to be to survive that world. Cold, controlled, empty. You're not empty now." "No. Now I'm terrified most of the time, wondering if I'm doing this right, if I'm enough without the armor." "You're more than enough." Lucien pulled her close. "Damien was right about one thing. I'll never be clean. The things I did, the people I hurt, that doesn't just wash away because I changed locations." "No," Lena agreed, "but you can be better. You can choose differently. That's what redemption is. Not erasing the past, just refusing to repeat it." Is that what we're doing? Seeking redemption? I think we're just trying to live, Lena said. Really live, not survive, not fight. Just exist in a way that doesn't hurt anyone. That's harder than it sounds. The best things usually are. They stood there as the sun melted into the ocean, painting the sky in colors that looked like hope. Behind them, the bookstore glowed warm in the growing darkness. Their home, their second chance, their quiet rebellion against everything they'd been expected to become. Ikeu. 2 years after leaving the city, Lena discovered she was pregnant. She told Lucian on a Tuesday morning in spring while they were opening the bookstore. He dropped the box of new arrivals he'd been carrying, books scattered across the floor. "You're sure?" he asked. 3 tests, all positive. Lucian stood frozen, his expression cycling through shock, terror, wonder, and something that might have been joy. "I don't know how to be a father," he said, finally. "You didn't know how to run a bookstore either. We figured that out. This is different. This is everything," Lena corrected, taking his hands. "This is the future we fought for, the life we chose instead of the one we were born into. What if I'm terrible at it? Then you'll learn. We both will. Together." Lucien pulled her into his arms carefully, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. "I love you," he whispered, "and I'm terrified." "Good. That means you care." The pregnancy was difficult. Lena spent 3 months fighting morning sickness that lasted all day. Lucien hovered constantly, reading every book on parenting he could find, panicking over every symptom. "You're going to drive yourself crazy," Lena said one evening while he researched infant CPR for the 3rd time. "I need to know how to keep her safe." "Her? Or him? Or them? I don't care. I just need to know how to do this right." "There is no right," Lena said gently. "There's just showing up and trying and loving them even when you mess up. Which you will. Because everyone does." "I don't want to be like my father." The admission came out raw and desperate. Lena crossed the room and took the laptop away from him. "You won't be," she said firmly, "because you're already asking the question. Your father never cared enough to wonder if he was doing it wrong. You do. That makes all the difference." Their daughter was born on a cold December morning, 7 pounds, dark hair. Gray eyes that looked like Lucian's but softer somehow. They named her Elena. Close to Lena but different enough to be her own person. Lucien held her for the first time with hands that shook, staring down at this tiny human they'd created with something like reverence. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's ours," Lena said. "I don't deserve this." "Yes, you do. You fought for this. We both did." Lucien looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. "I'm going to spend every day of my life making sure she never has to fight the way we did," he said. "She's going to grow up safe, loved, free." "I know," Lena said, and watching him cradle their daughter with infinite gentleness, she believed it. This was what redemption looked like. Not erasing the past, but building a future so bright it made the darkness matter less. 5 years later, the bookstore had become a fixture of Haven's Rest. Locals gathered there for book clubs and coffee. Tourists stopped by for recommendations. Children came for story time on Saturday mornings, sitting cross-legged while Lucian read to them in the same voice that used to give orders that ended lives. Elena helped shelve books, her small hands placing them carefully in alphabetical order while she hummed songs she made up. Lena managed the expanded coffee shop that now served breakfast and lunch. Roman visited twice a year, always bearing gifts for Elena and stories about his security consulting business. Agent Torres sent a card every Christmas. Never said much, just checking in. Damien remained locked in federal prison 3,000 miles away. Letters arrived occasionally, rambling, hateful manifestos about betrayal and revenge. Lucien burned them without reading past the first line. The past was done. This was what mattered. One evening in late summer, Lena found Lucien sitting on the porch watching Elena chase fireflies in the yard. She handed him a beer and sat beside him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How different this is from anything I imagined my life would be." "Better or worse?" "Better," Lucien said without hesitation. "So much better I can't even describe it." "Try." He thought for a moment, watching Elena's silhouette dart between trees. I used to measure my worth by how much power I had, how many people feared me, how untouchable I could become. And I built this entire empire on that foundation, except it was hollow, empty, just control for the sake of control. And now my worth is measured by whether I can make her laugh, whether I remember to cut the crusts off her sandwiches, whether I can read the same book 15 times without complaining. He smiled. It's so small compared to what I used to do, but it's real, and it matters more than anything I built before. Lena rested her head on his shoulder. You're a good father. I'm trying. That's all any of us can do. Elena ran up to the porch, breathless and beaming. Daddy, I caught 3 fireflies. Did you let them go? Of course. They have families to get back to. Lucien scooped her into his lap. Very wise. Tell me the story again, Elena demanded, about the prince and the girl he saved. Lena and Lucien exchanged glances. They told Elena a carefully edited version of how they met. A story about a powerful man who made mistakes and a brave woman who helped him become better. No violence, no crime, just the bones of truth wrapped in fairy tale language. All right, Lucien said, settling Elena against his chest. Once upon a time, there was a man who thought he had to be strong to survive. He built walls around his heart and told himself he didn't need anyone. But he was wrong. Because he met the girl, Elena said, already knowing the story by heart. Because he met the girl. And she was braver than anyone he'd ever known. She saw past his walls and his anger and found something worth saving underneath. And then what happened? Then they had to fight very hard to be together. Bad people tried to keep them apart, but they refused to give up on each other. Because they were in love, Elena said matter-of-factly. Because they were in love, Lucien agreed, and love made them stronger than all the walls and fear combined. And then they came here, to this house by the ocean, and they lived happily ever after. Elena considered this. That's a good ending. It's the best ending, Lucien said. He looked at Lena over Elena's head, and she saw everything in his eyes that he couldn't say in front of their daughter. Gratitude, love, wonder that this was their life now, that they'd survived everything and somehow found this. Elena eventually fell asleep in Lucien's arms. He carried her inside and tucked her into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin and kissing her forehead. Sweet dreams, little one, he whispered. When he returned to the porch, Lena was still sitting there watching the stars emerge. Do you think Damien was right? Lucien asked, settling beside her. That we'll never be clean? That the past will always be there? Lena thought about it, really thought about it, then shook her head. I think the past will always be part of us. The scars don't disappear, the memories don't fade. But that doesn't mean we're defined by them. We chose to be different, to build something better. That choice matters more than where we started. You really believe that? I believe in this, Lena said, gesturing to the house behind them where their daughter slept peacefully. I believe in the life we built, the people we're becoming, the future we're giving her. She'll ask more questions eventually, Lucien said, when she's older, about who we were, what we did. Then we'll tell her the truth, age-appropriate, honest, and we'll explain that people can change, that mistakes don't have to be permanent, that redemption is possible if you're willing to fight for it. Lucien took her hand, threading their fingers together. I never thought I'd get this, he said quietly. Peace, family. A reason to wake up that isn't about survival or power or fear. I thought I was too broken. We were both broken, Lena said. We just put ourselves back together differently than we started. They sat in comfortable silence while the ocean whispered against rocks and fireflies danced in the darkness, and their daughter breathed steadily in her small room filled with books and toys and love. This was what victory looked like. Not empires or power or control, just 2 people who'd survived hell and chosen each other on the other side. Just a quiet life built from the ashes of everything they'd destroyed. Just enough. 10 years after leaving the city, Lena stood in the bookstore early one morning before opening. The space had expanded over the years. More shelves, more seating, a small stage where local authors gave readings. The walls were covered with photographs of customers and events and memories. One photograph in particular caught her eye, her and Lucien on their 10th wedding anniversary. Not the cold ceremony in the chapel, but a real wedding they'd held on the beach 5 years after arriving in Haven's Rest. Elena as flower girl, Roman as best man, a handful of friends they'd made in town as witnesses, vows they'd written themselves about second chances and choosing love even when it was terrifying. The door chimed. Lucien entered carrying coffee and pastries from the bakery down the street. "Thought you might be here," he said. "Just thinking." "About?" Lena turned to face him. "About how far we've come. From that night in the rain when your collectors showed up at my door to this. It feels impossible." "It feels earned," Lucien corrected. "We fought for every piece of this." "Do you ever regret it? Giving up the Empire?" Lucien set down the coffee and crossed to her, his movements still slightly careful from old injuries that ached in cold weather. "Not once," he said. "I'd burn 1,000 empires if it meant keeping this." "Even knowing what it cost?" "Especially knowing what it cost." His hand cupped her face. "You asked me once what you were to me, back when I was still pretending I didn't care. I remember. You said I was a contract. I was lying to both of us." Lucien's eyes held hers. "You were never a contract. From the moment you called me a coward in my own office, you were the thing that broke through every wall I'd built. You made me feel human again, vulnerable, terrified, alive." "Is that good or bad?" "It's everything." He kissed her softly, the kind of kiss that came from a decade of choosing each other every single day. When they broke apart, Lena rested her forehead against his. "We did it," she whispered. "We survived." "We did more than survive," Lucien said. "We learned how to live." The door chimed again. Elena entered with her backpack, now 15 and rolling her eyes at finding her parents being affectionate. "Gross," she announced. "Can you save the romance for when I'm not here?" "Never," Lucien said, pulling her into the embrace. "You're stuck with us." Elena pretended to struggle, but Lena could see her smiling. This was their family, built from ashes and violence and impossible choices, but theirs in a way that nothing else had ever been. Later, after the bookstore opened and customers filtered in and life continued in its quiet, beautiful way, Lena stood behind the coffee counter and watched Lucien help a young girl find a book. He crouched down to her level, his voice gentle as he asked what she liked to read. The same man who'd once ruled a criminal empire with ruthless efficiency now spent his days recommending middle-grade fiction to children. And somehow, that felt like the greatest victory of all. Not because he'd become soft, but because he'd become real, human, free. That night, after Elena was asleep and the bookstore was locked and the world had settled into darkness, Lena and Lucien sat on their porch watching the ocean. "Do you think we get more, Soy?" Lucien asked quietly. "After everything we did, do we deserve more than this?" Lena took his hand. "I think we get exactly what we build," she said. "No more, no less. And we built this. A family, a home, a life worth living. That's not a reward for the past. It's what we created in spite of it." "Then I'll take it," Lucien said. "Every day. For as long as we have." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence while the ocean breathed and stars wheeled overhead, and somewhere far away the past continued existing without them. Because they'd learned the most important lesson of all. You couldn't erase what you'd done, but you could choose what you did next. And sometimes, if you fought hard enough and loved fiercely enough and refused to let the darkness win, you got a second chance to become someone worth being. Not perfect, not clean, but real. And for two people who'd spent so long playing roles written by violence and fear, being real was the greatest freedom imaginable. The wind carried salt and possibility. The waves whispered promises. And Lena Devereaux sat beside her husband watching their hard-won peace and knew with absolute certainty that they'd survived everything the world threw at them, not because they were strong, but because they'd chosen each other every single day, even when it was impossible, especially then. And that was the only ending that mattered.